Good evening, everyone. I call to order the October 9th, 2023 business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request everyone in the audience to silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Ms. Wagner, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Bolton?
Present.
Mr. Craig?
Here.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Dr. Moffitt?
Here.
Mr. Morosky? Mrs. Weinberg?
Here.
President Lindy?
Here. Members of the public who wish to speak and are online may do so by clicking the chat button now. The chat feature will remain open for your requests for 5 minutes. Please share your name, your affiliation, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if you would like a direct response to any questions you might have. As we get started this evening, my understanding is Ms. Jones has something that she would like to share.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lindy. I thought that it would be very appropriate if people didn't mind if we veered a little way from the agenda in this time of world turmoil. And with the situation that's going on in Israel, I thought it would be appropriate for us to give a moment of silence. We're a nonpartisan board. This is not about politics. This is about people. So if I could ask that we give a moment of silence to recognize what people are dealing with at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. I'd also like to start by thanking the Aiken community for welcoming us to Aiken High School this evening and afternoon. It is fabulous to be here. I was sharing with Ms. Jones before the meeting that the last time we had a meeting in a school was before the outbreak of COVID-19. And it is just very nice to be back in a school building. So thank you very much for having us. As we move through our agenda this evening, you will notice a small change at the top. You will see that the section below call to order lists our goals and guardrails. These are the most important 5 student outcome goals that our board adopted last December as they reflect the vision for what our community has most prioritized when it comes to student outcomes, and also the guardrails, which represent the values of our community as represented through that same decision-making process last December. As we go through our meetings in the coming weeks and months, you will likely see more and more of our attention turn to monitoring the extent to which our district is making progress against these 5 most important student outcome goals and against these 6 guardrails. As we turn to the next item in the agenda, hearing of the public, I'll just quote from our governance coaches again, reminding me that it's the superintendent's update. So as we turn to the superintendent's update next, the last thing I wanted to say was this quote from one of our governance coaches, Ray Hart, the president of or executive director of the Council of Great City Schools, likes to say that what happens in the boardroom is echoed in the classroom. And so my hope is that as we have a highly productive and focused meeting this evening, we are modeling the kind of focus and attention and hope and rigor that we hope to see in all of our classrooms as well. And so with that, I will not go to hearing of the public, and we will instead go to the superintendent's update.
Very, very brief update this evening. I just would like to honor and recognize our family and community engagement team. Last week, the Sponsors for Men and More had over 300 young men at the district office for their convening for the fall. They were all dressed and outfitted in their activities for the day. They started at about 3rd grade and went up to 12th grade. And so it was just great to see them in the building, engaging in leadership development, and seeing our schools represented. So that's the update for this evening.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Wright. With item C behind us, we will move directly into item D, which is hearing of the public. Each speaker this evening will have 2 minutes and will direct all comments to the presiding officer. Once a request to speak has been granted, if you are online, you will be invited to enter. Please click on the camera icon to go interactive. Again, provide your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if you'd like a direct response. This request is consistent with board protocol, and we appreciate your help. In the unusual event that someone is not willing to follow this protocol, we reserve the right to end that person's time. Each speaker, again, will have 2 minutes to speak. When the timer goes off, your time is up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. After speaking, if you are online, you will briefly see the welcome screen again as you transition back into the live stream meeting. Mr. Hoying, could you let us know how many speakers we have online this evening? Or Rob, would you let us know? We have 0 online speakers. Okay. Finally, we ask that your public commentary be respectful of all listeners. Thank you very much. For in-person, we have 3 requests this evening. And I'm going to read all 3. We're in kind of a nice smaller space today, so we don't need to have everybody come down at once. But I'll give you the names in the order so that people know who's next. We have Nona Landis first, followed by Emily Scott, followed by Amy Cock-Ballou. While Ms. Landis is coming down, we'll share that we typically don't respond in the meeting. Sometimes because of time, sometimes because there's follow-up work that needs to happen, but we do ask for people's contact information so we can provide a response if they would like one.
There we go. Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Wright, Treasurer Wagner. Some of you know me. I'm Nona Landis. I'm the LSDMC chair at Gamble Montessori Elementary. And I'm here today to raise a question or maybe a concern about the future of the Montessori program at Gamble Montessori and as it relates to the Rising Stars preschool program that we are also kind of sharing a building with. As some of you know, when Gamble Montessori first opened in 2019, the goal was to have it be to meet the needs for Montessori education on the West Side, which was growing. And we were going to share space with Rising Stars temporarily and then gradually kind of ease those classrooms out to make more room for the Montessori program. And we want to, as an LSDMC, raise up this issue again because to date that hasn't happened. The original plan has not been followed. And we do know that, of course, plans change and district administration changes and lots of things, like there's been a lot and COVID and all of that. But we do want to re-engage the board, and I know that Superintendent Wright told me that she also wanted to re-engage the board on this issue. So we would really like to invite you all to have a conversation with us about what the future for GME is and what that looks like, and what the board's intentions are for growing the Montessori program at our school in particular, especially because the Rising Stars program, as it currently, we have 6 classrooms, about 120 seats, but only 89 of them are filled, and only 71 of them ever have students attend regularly. And we think about all the time the number of Montessori students we've had to turn away because we don't have the capacity to bring them into our community. So again, we as an LSDMC just want to raise that concern for the board and hope to talk more about this issue and what the plans are in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Landis. Next, we have Emily Scott.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Superintendent Wright. Hi, my name is Emily Scott. I am a mother, a very proud mother here at Aiken High School. And the reason I'm coming to everybody tonight is because here recently, the band, the marching band, and other bands here in Cincinnati Public, we like to come together. We like to go to the games. The kids came to support as well. They love playing, but above playing, they love good grades. They study hard. They work together, not only here at Aiken, but at all of the other high schools that we work with. We battle. And then when they leave those battles, they come out and hug. They have friends. They are family. And we had a few games this season in particular that were in place for us to go to and were canceled. One was canceled the week prior to, one was canceled the day of, which was this past Friday. And from my knowledge, I've been told that there's some miscommunication between the athletic directors at the different schools. some athletic directors saying that band programs cannot come because there's not enough room in the stadiums. The kids say, hey, we'll sit on the ground, we'll stand the whole game. We want to showcase our hard work. So as a parent, I'm standing up and I'm asking if everybody could try to come together, maybe speak to the athletic directors to get them all on one page so that these kids who study very hard and have amazing grades are able to go to these games and support their school teams and play their music and showcase the hard work that they put in. I'm just asking if we can figure out as a team how we can all become one, get on the same page. I'm sorry. That's really all I have to say, but I would in the future like to have some type of response so we can figure out and everyone can be on the same page, please. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Scott. And our last speaker this evening is Amy Cockbaloo.
As I said to other people this evening, so I apologize. So good evening, board. I'm kind of new at this part, but my name is Amy Cockbaloo, and I have two amazing students and friends of theirs, and an amazing previous band instructor, Barton. He has been amazing since our kids had started here. And I have an honor scholar student who's graduating this year, and she has busted her bottom to even learn different instruments. So my thing is the same as Emily. Our children bust out their bottoms and want to work so hard. We don't have a stadium here to play football, and that makes it harder. So when our students work so hard, just like other students in other schools, it should not be fair that they work their bottoms off to be able to show what they have accomplished. It's not to show off, it's to show what they've accomplished, how much work. My son Aiden is amazing. He has taught himself how to play the piano, the drums, the guitar he's learning. He is the sousaphone he just started carrying around, and the saxophone. I mean, the boys, trumpet and everything, every wind instrument. My daughter, she is amazing. She doesn't stop. She's trying to learn the violin. We are a member of a church, and they play at our church, the talent night. They do it and get other students from this school to join our church for this talent night. That's how engaged these children are. It's not just this school, it's other schools, but they really want to play. They're so upset when they can't, and we're supposed to hold them up, right? We're supposed to hold them up and show them no matter what they try to do, that they're going to accomplish with everyone else's help. So that's what I ask. I ask for all of you to really reconsider on being able to allow these children to play in the football games. This is what this is supposed to do. We're supposed to hold them up, and we're supposed to show our team spirits through our school and education.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. In a moment here, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes, but I understand the superintendent may want to share a brief comment.
Thank you, President Lindy. So I just want to clarify for our band students and for our band parents, and also for the board, there has not been a new provision. There has not been a new guideline. There has not been a change with the involvement of band students and participating in games. It comes down to the decision of the athletic director and the school-based administration. So we will follow up with them, but ultimately that's where the question actually goes for the involvement and how students are participating. We have not removed the ability for students to participate.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. We'll move on to item E on the agenda this evening. Is there a motion to approve the following minutes? Special public meeting August 30, special meeting September 11th, business meeting September 11th, and special public joint meeting September 13th.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice President Craig. Any discussion on the approval of the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. We have a healthy list of committee reports this evening under item F. Dr. Moffat, are you interested in presenting both of the attendance boundary committee updates
Sure.
when you go first?
I will do that with brevity.
Thank you.
For the best interest of time. So I want to say that we've had 2 ad hoc meetings. This is the ad hoc attendance boundary committee meetings. I'm also going to invite my 2 colleagues to interject. I'm going to be very, very brief because they are posted on the board board docs, and they are 17 pages. So our first meeting, September 12th, was an emergency meeting, not really emergency, but just was an additional meeting to our regular meeting to talk about items of consensus. We are going to be preparing a report for the board at a special board meeting because it's going to be rather lengthy around the consensus items that our committee came up with. Just as a reminder to the community, we have 3 corridors. We've got the East Corridor, the Central Corridor, and the West Corridor. All of our schools fall within one of those 3. So we're at Aiken, and that would be in the Central Corridor, right? Or is this the West? West Corridor.
Hold on.
I thought Aiken was Central. So,
In more ways than one.
well, coming from a Aiken graduate. So we did talk about that. We are looking at and exploring the following options in collaboration with the administration. I'm going to say that again because nothing that I am talking about has been decided yet. So we are exploring options like a middle school option. What does that look like? 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 6th, 7th, 8th. We're looking at that. We are looking at that. I have to say that 100 times because someone will call us out. So we are also looking at facilities and our enrollment at the various schools, programming at the various schools. During the course of this year, we've had a program audit done by our administration. What does it look like? Programs such as Montessori, programs such as specialty like the arts. What does that look like? So our September 12th meeting was to finalize some of those lingering questions that we had from the summer. And it is very, very lengthy, but we got to it. So read that at your leisure. And it talks about the programs, Gifted and Talented, Career and Technical, CET, which is our, CTE, which is our Career Tech, and Environmental Studies. It has all of that in there. Go to Board Docs and look at it. It's pretty lengthy. That was the September 12th meeting. Does anyone on the committee have anything to add? So I will move on to our September 28th meeting, which was our normally regularly scheduled meeting. So we had a report from Mr. Gullahue. I pronounce his name wrong all the time, so I apologize for that. But we wanted to ask about the middle school option. We've heard from the community, we've heard from teachers and staff that our special group of lovely students are that middle school option. So we talked a little bit more extensively about what does that look like for capacity if we were to differentiate them and have a middle school option in one of the corridors. I'm not going to go through the whole entire meeting because it was almost 2 hours, but you can look at the minutes from the meeting, September 28th, on Board Docs. We talked about that. And I'll give you a small caveat. The East Corridor can possibly accommodate that. The Central Corridor can possibly accommodate that. But spacing on the west side for our Gamble, like we've had a Gamble parent here, that has posed us some problems. So that is where we are looking at attendance boundaries. We're looking at attendance for all of our different schools. Join our meetings. They are the next one is coming up in October this month. And so we are listening to community feedback. We've got people that come, but what the purpose of the committee is to look at enrollment and attendance boundaries in our schools. And so I submit both of these reports in entirety for review. Does the committee have anything to add? Yes, ma'am.
I would just add relevant to tonight's discussion, even though we try not to, get involved with that. At the ad hoc committee, as you pointed out, and we've pointed out a number of times, the issue of preschool classrooms taking up additional space, whether it's over at Gamble Montessori Elementary or over here at Aiken. It's obvious that part of this ad hoc issue has to be to find more preschool space so that these buildings that are crowded can be less crowded and use it for their primary source. I think that's important. And then the idea as well about turning away Montessorian kids. I know that that's part of the ad hoc look-see too, even as a third Montessori high school, as we have more and more folks choosing Montessori. So it's a very relevant, very active committee. And I know the board's anxiously awaiting some of the stuff that we're bringing back.
For sure. Board Member Jones?
Yes, thank you. I'll be brief too. I just wanted to add to Dr. Moffitt's report that what we're really trying to do or think about is how to reimagine our system of schools. That's it in a nutshell. And so along with the points that she's making and Ms. Bolton is making, I want to add that we're really looking at not only attendance boundaries, but enrollment, capacity, and equity in program access. So those are kind of some additional points. So a lot of work going into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you, Dr. Moffitt.
Yeah, I submit them as written.
Thank you very much. I have one question for my part before we move on to the Policy and Equity Committee. I heard you reference the request for a regular business meeting to be dedicated to discussing and reviewing a draft of the plan. I was just hoping we could connect maybe to look at the calendar in the coming weeks. We have a pretty packed rest of the semester, but I want to make sure we have a plan with some intention, and I'm sure we can figure that out.
Sure. It was suggested to have a separate meeting than our regular meetings because of the large amount of content that will be presented to you.
And that may absolutely be the right call. I'm excited to look at the calendar together and we can figure out the best spot to go. Thank you very much. We have next our Policy Committee meeting minutes from September 15th. We're without our Policy Committee chair. Does another member of the Policy Committee want to present that report this evening? And we can just say that it's posted on board docs for everybody who would like to read it and that it's presented as written, if that's what you'd like.
Since the biggest part of whatever we've done is going to be reported later regarding the bylaws. So that'll count, but yeah, the rest can wait.
Okay, thank you very much. Policy Committee. Next we have our Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee, and I understand that these will be presented by Vice President Craig.
Ready. So at our Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee, we started with a great discussion with our folks from the Cincinnati Tennis Foundation. They brought in a discussion about both the upgrading the facilities at Withrow, as well as other general ways that the Cincinnati Tennis Foundation and CPS can partner together to bring opportunities to other students throughout the district. It was actually a really good discussion about some of their ideas of how the facilities would be used and how it would benefit and kind of where they were in that process. You get a chance to look at the minutes, you'll see the great display of kind of what the facilities would look like, as well as the planned facilities, as well as kind of what the upgrade is to the property there and how it won't be as onerous as some folks might have imagined it would be when you're building a building next to tennis courts on school property. Then we went into the discussion around the benefits audit, looking at kind of an improvement of some of the processes, as well as getting some of the efficiencies into understanding how do we get better at both being effective in our management of the benefits processes. So we looked at things like our COBRA management and other things of how we're getting better at those and improving. In other areas where we've seen distinct growth, such as the data validation. And again, just improving our internal processes with regards to our HR benefits. We went through our monthly financials and discussed specifically our typical reports, but also discussing the Community Reinvestment Act agreements, looking at new steps that are being done through the Treasurer's Office with regard to making sure everybody understands what the allowable uses for funds are. And again, trying to create a process that will make folks understand things clearer and easier. We looked at a discussion regarding kind of how a committee had come together to discuss the difference between an internal or a independent consultant and an employee, and distinctions that were necessary for that. This is crucial and important because it also ties into whether or not things like benefits have to be paid into as part of that discussion. So we want to make sure we're having everybody understand it and do it correctly. We also began the discussion around the fiscal year 2025 budget. You'll hear some of that, my understanding today. Well, but again, it's the starting process. Is not the kind of looking into getting us ahead of the game so that we're making sure that we're being prepared. We also had a really, really good conversation again around how we are structuring out some of the discussion around other ways of funding. So whether it's COPS or additionally the levies potentials. And so it brought us a great discussion around, again, the potential options that we have to look forward to, as well as recognizing some of the challenges that have come with each of those. And then finally, we did a discussion around some of the financials around the Preschool Promise and kind of our connection to how we will incorporate that into our budget discussions going forward. As you know, a couple meetings ago, the board did have a discussion regarding kind of what the principles of those were as far as funding and how we were going to work actively to get to agreement. So it was more a discussion around the financial side of that. And then we had a hearing of the public in which Sally Grimes from ABC offered a few words and met these minutes as written.
Thank you very much, Vice President Craig. Any questions about the minutes or the report from the Finance Committee? Okay, great. And then as we move on, I'm not sure if this is a question for our board staff or for the our wonderful, gracious hosts at Aiken. Is it at all possible to turn the lights down a little bit? It gets very hot up here. And by down, I mean off.
I thought I was the only one.
We don't want them off.
Maybe I was having a flash.
President, I know you don't want folks to see you here.
I look better in the dark. That's definitely. If it's not possible to turn them down, I know, is it? Can we be?
I don't want to sit in the dark.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, you mean these? I thought you meant those.
No. Just that I think they're uncomfortable for some folks, and I think they also make it hard to see and a little bit hot. Great. Then thank you for your help on that front. And then in the next item we have will be our committee report from our Health and Safety Committee.
All right, hopefully I can see. So thank you, President Lindy. I'm going to give the report from the Health and Safety Committee. We met on September the 18th at 3:00 p.m. in the Rosa E. Blackwell Interactive Learning Center. And the attendees, of course, were the Health and Safety Committee members, the administration staff, which was Derek Little, Chief of Staff. We also had our community members, Sandra Jackson, Christy Woodworth with Gun Safety and Be Smart. We had Mary Mowney with the Hamilton County Commission on Women and Girls. And we also had Laura Wonger in English as a Second Language and School Safety. So we started off the meeting discussing gun safety and Be Smart. Sandra Jackson with Gun Safety and Be Smart provided the committee with the following summary about the meaning of the following Be Smart acronyms. Ms. Jackson also thanked the district for being the first public school district in the state of Ohio to pass the School Board Secure Storage Notification Resolution on April the 25th, 2022. Ms. Jackson also reported that the Be Smart participated in the following activities within CPS. It was the CPS Back to School Packet, the Safety Town Hall and CPS Back to School Picnic, and the CPS Back to School Picnic in August. We then further engaged Ms. Jackson, stating that the Be Smart would like to conduct an in-person caregiver event in which they would set up a table to engage parents, and the group would distribute lots. Ms. Jackson also stated that she's able to get students connected with the Students Demand Action Organization. We did come up with 2 action items, and I will go over those a little bit later after I go through the other topics. We then moved on with menstrual health, feminine products in the Ohio District, and we had Mary Mowney with the Hamilton Commission on Women and Girls. She informed the committee that the Hamilton County Commission, Denise Driehaus, and 2 other colleagues from Cleveland, Ohio, formed the Coalition for Free Menstrual Products in Ohio Schools at the request of the Hamilton County Commission on Women and Girls. So effective October 3rd, free feminine hygiene products in schools. The recently enacted state operating budget includes $5 million to support the schools in providing free menstrual products for students. The committee member, Carolyn Jones, recommended that Dr. Little consider reaching out to schools and providing education for girls regarding menstruation below the 6th grade level and including their parents. Dr. Little informed the committee that the district would also meet the October 3rd deadline of having the products in the schools. He also reported that the district purchased $20,000 worth of product for the dispensers. We then went on to talk about physical and mental safety update. Dr. Little informed the committee that the community learning centers and the partnership with MindPeace has caused CPS to be instrumental in students having access to mental health care services. He also reported the district would be partnering with Interact for Health, and he also informed the committee that student athletes needing mental health services were referred through MindPeace, and that they also were receiving dating, violence services, and prevention, and it was all covered through the health curriculum. We then went into talking about athletics and extracurricular. We got an update from Dr. Little regarding athletic trainers, and then also we discussed training and equipment, help with injury prevention. We also talked about guidelines in the state of Ohio regarding heat regulation, and then we also discussed AEDs on the playing field. Dr. Little informed us that all school buildings were equipped with AEDs. We then also discussed about how the district would be looking into getting more athletic trainers. We then went into pedestrian safety and getting an update in regards to crossing guards with a primary investment in pedestrian safety around the schools. Crossing guard vacancies have increased dramatically, and we are needing to revisit the structure and ownership. So we ended the meeting with 4 action items. The first action item was the committee recommended that the district do a campaign against National Gun Violence Awareness Day, which is June. So we would be looking to do that June of 2024. The next item would be SMART would provide the committee with information about the Wear Orange Day for June of 2024. The color honors survivors and victims of gun violence. As we stated before, the committee recommended that Dr. Little consider reaching out to the schools and providing education for girls regarding menstruation, health, and menstruation below the 6th grade and including their parents. And then last but not least, the committee asked Dr. Little to look into the number of gender-neutral bathrooms across the district, and if the schools are able to make the decision to have gender-neutral bathrooms, we stated that he would get back to us informing the committee if the schools or central office makes a decision about which buildings have gender-neutral bathrooms. The other business that did come up is we talked about the status of nurses in CPS schools. We talked about a school bus safety update from the state level, and we had 1 person speak for hearing of the public. And the next meeting will be Monday, December the 11th. And I submit these minutes as written.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Weinberg. Are there any questions from board members about the committee report from the Health and Safety Committee? Hearing none. Yes, Ms. Bolton.
Yes, thank you for raising the issue of the pedestrian safety and also raising again the issue of crossing guards and ownership and structure. I appreciate you guys being persistent about that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Any other comments or questions? Last call. Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt all 5 committee reports, please?
Second.
Okay, I heard Ms. Bolton first. Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Jones. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, our committee reports have been adopted. We're moving on then to item G, which is our only presentation for this evening on the Human Resources Audit.
Thank you, President Lindy. Our presentation for the Human Resources Audit will be done by our Chief of Human Resources and Talent, Ms. Katrina Riley. I do have copies that I'll pass to you as well.
Good evening. Riley, I'm the Chief of Human Resources and Talent at Cincinnati Public Schools. I stand before you tonight to go over the response for the HR talent audit that was conducted by the Council of Great City Schools. So we're going to get into some really deep information in regards to what the team has been doing since the audit and kind of taking us through the history prior to the audit. So the first slide that you have before you outlines the individuals who are charged with helping me to lead this task of changing and redirecting the focus of the HR department. So these individuals that are listed here include 3 directors and 2 managers that report directly to me as the Chief of Human Resources and Talent that are responsible in various departments of HR talent to make sure that we are guiding the work forward for the department. This slide really outlines the years of experience, not only inside Cincinnati Public Schools for each one of us, but also outlines the years of experience in the educational setting, as well as the years of experience that each one of us have in the area of HR or talent management, as well as any additional unique experiences that we bring to the table. We felt it was important to share with you the individuals that are charged with this work so that you can see some of the uniqueness as an entire team, to see the years of experience and collectiveness, what we're bringing to the table in our commitment to not only human resources, but to education and CPS as a whole. So prior to the audit, I want to just bring your attention to some of the things that have happened prior to the audit. In spring 2021, there was a talent merger that took place. During this time, prior to 2021, HR, which we typically know as our traditional human resources and operations, such as onboarding, staffing, benefits, and those types of things, was really separated from the talent department, which what we typically know as evaluations, professional development, and those sorts of things were housed in a different department. During 2021 in the spring, it was a decision made to bring both departments together, which is more in line with what we see across the educational setting, where you see now you see more human resources and talent departments merged together to kind of encompass the entire life cycle of an employee. During that time, there was a revised naming nomenclature to describe the new scope of work. A new director was hired, as well as the beginning of phase 1 of the merger and training for both departments together. In fall 2022, that merger continued and some additional organizational adjustments were made. We had a new HR leader, myself as the chief, added to the executive leadership team. There was restructured roles and responsibilities specifically in the talent acquisition and staffing lane, where we were able to identify 2 distinct needs in our certificated staffing versus our civil service staffing. We also hired a new director of talent acquisition and staffing, which was a retired rehire, which we're excited about, bringing back one of our own to help move this work forward. In addition, we added a new director of leadership development and school-based pipelines and added a new position, which was the director of employee and labor relations. There was feedback that took place prior to the audit that started when Superintendent Wright came on board and continued once I came on board in July of 2022. That led us to understanding and realizing there was a need for the audit. With such observations that took place during that time, those things included having understanding about some of the past audit experiences that had taken place for the department. We noticed there were some great licensure concerns. There was missing written processes and procedures, a definite fractured organizational structure with the merger that had happened prior, benefits errors, limited human resources, capital resources, and there was grave concerns regarding responsiveness. So with all of that information, we were able to take some steps prior to the audit happening. So coming in board in July, we made sure that one of the first tasks that was done was separating civil service out from certificated, given the unique needs that civil service employees have and those unique requirements that some of our civil service employees or potential employees need. We also hired key vacancies during that time, around July, September, and October of my arrival. That included the new manager of talent acquisition and staffing, hired a new data manager to be responsible for looking at our data for our department, and hired a new senior support personnel person to be the point person inside an employee care center. In addition to that, also coming on board, we took a look at our employee handbook for staff, as well as did some cross-work collaboration and training for all of the departments to eliminate some of the silos that were taking place prior, and we continue into the phase 2 of the merger for both teams. So to take you through what the overview of the HR audit process looked like, we did do an RFP indicating that we saw some needs for change, and Council of Great City Schools was awarded the bid for the RFP. So beginning in February, the team from the Council of Great City Schools was invited into our district. They met with several members from various departments, including the Treasurer's Office, Human Resources, Talent, the Audit Department, and several other individuals. Interview informational sessions was had. Then we also had an informational gathering session where the council was able to look at various documents, procedures that we had in place, and to review kind of where the department was during that time. And then in August of 2023, the audit was submitted, and then the council was able to present to you all as a board in September. Some of the summary findings from the audit from Council of Great City Schools, they focused on six main areas that I want to highlight for you that we were able to pull from the audit. And those areas, if you look at the slides here, it showcases the particular area of focus as well as the recommendations. So one area, the first three areas were the focus on accuracy and efficiency, database decision-making, and the new union contract planning. And some of those recommendations provided by the Council of Great City Schools was for an increased improvement in HR processes and procedures, developing dashboards that relate to the KPIs to make sure that we're fiscally responsible as a department, as well as launching any key task force initiatives for the development of the new contract during the negotiation period that is about to take place. The remaining three items were expanding recruitment and pipeline efforts, employment development, and organizational structure. And those recommendations in those areas included for us to continue leveraging all areas of recruitment, recognizing that it's not an if or one or the other, that we have to do all activities involved to make sure that we're reaching our largest demographic possible, to make sure that we're filling all vacancies. To make sure also that we are ensuring sufficient supports for the early career teachers that was explicitly outlined from the council, and making sure that we are reviewing the organizational structure within the department to make sure that we are focusing on our employees for the entire life cycle. So to take you through the highlights of the progress that has been made since the audit, we want to cover these areas of focus, progress highlights, and the key next steps that the department has identified. So under the area of focus and accuracy and efficiency, what has taken place, which was mentioned earlier, is taking a look at our benefits audit, definitely leveraging the results that the internal audit team found to be beneficial for the team to move forward to correct any errors that we've been having in the past. And we are looking to hire our new benefit systems analyst by the end of this month of October. In the area of database decision-making, we've hired, as I mentioned, a manager level of data management who's been really influential in working with the financial tech team to fully develop and launch dashboards. So we hope to have that in place by December of this year. With the new union contract planning, we want to make sure that we are not having contract language that prevents us or inadvertently prevents us from meeting both sides of the goals from the union standpoint as well as a department standpoint and an organizational standpoint. And that includes having negotiation team meetings and member training prior to the beginning of the negotiation period. Continue with expanding recruitment and pipeline efforts. We have simplified the interview process and added online options this past school year, We revised our recruitment calendar to make sure that we are indicating places that we are going that are beneficial, that yield results and positive results, and to the department and the organization. In terms of employee development, we've partnered already with the curriculum and instruction department to increase the professional development offerings to all employee groups. This year, we were able to add in additional opportunities for our paraprofessionals this year, and we're really excited about that. And we want to continue streamlining our calendar and adding in those days ahead of time so that can eliminate the need for any additional MOUs to make sure that employees are thought about prior to and making sure that they're developed throughout the year in their employment here. And with the organizational structure, we've already begun the cross-team training for the different roles so we can eliminate the silos amongst the department, but we're also identifying key supports, and that's not mentioned here, but we're also looking at other ways that we can automate some of the work for various self-help options for our employees in the district. This slide we thought was very important to share with you as it relates so that you could see how Cincinnati Public Schools HR and Talent Department fares in terms of the numbers of employees that we serve here in the district in conjunction with the number of employees that are housed inside the HR department. So currently we service about 36,000 students, about 6,500 employees, which gives us an average ratio of 175 to 1. This year, we have added 7 additional FTE through our budget process, which does bring us to 147 employees supported to 1. But that is still way over what the industry standard of SHRM is indicating for our department our size and an organization our size. The recommendation is 62 individuals. And something to keep in mind with this slide, this does not take into account the individuals that are actually manually entering information for employees. This takes into an account the entire department, which includes all lanes, employee labor relations, talent acquisition and staffing, our labor relations, employee effectiveness, and our leadership development. So that includes all individuals and not just the individuals in talent, onboarding, and staffing. Some additional context that I think is important to share that was raised during the presentation from the Council of Great City Schools talked a little bit about the relationship between human resources and talent and the treasurer's office. So I want to highlight the areas of office where the office has opportunities to collaborate so that everyone's clear of how the departments work together. So there is definitely cross-team collaboration that takes place between HR talent as well as the treasurer's office, that includes the financial technical team. There's meaningful communication that happens between both sides of the house, as well as despite those reporting structures, even though human resources and talent reports directly to the superintendent, and then we know that the treasurer's office reports directly to you, the board. The informational system that was referenced in the report from the Council of Great City Schools mentioned the Business Plus platform, which is owned by the company PowerSchool. And there was some changes that were going to be taking place, and we recognized that there were some elements of the human resources elements that did not integrate fully to the Business Plus platform. So there's a process already in place to remove those particular systems and be replaced with the unified talent system that is a Business Plus system to speak and integrate more fully to the Business Plus system so that both teams can work more efficiently. In addition to that, there was reference to pay concerns that was not initially a main focus of the audit, but both teams have been working in collaboration to identify any paycheck concerns, and they work consistently to identify those concerns and immediately correct those concerns. In addition to that, writing processes and procedures to prevent those concerns from happening in the future. There's also cross-department functions that directly relate to the treasurer's office, and those things from my shop, HR Talent, are acquisition and staffing onboarding, background and licensure, staffing and pay assignments, as well as benefits. Those items that we have to input directly create a direct output from the treasurer's office through payroll, benefits, budget and position control. So the last things that you have here are the appendices Just some slides here that outline where Cincinnati Public Schools relates in terms of our ratio in comparison to other school districts or organizations our size and their ratios. Also, there's the organizational chart revisions for your review that just outlines the organizational chart revisions that have taken place since my arrival in July. Also, we provided information that outlines the existing HR talent and treasurer cross collaboration structures and the frequency of those meetings that take place. And this slide, as I mentioned before, just gives you a visual of all of the elements that speak to and receive information from the Business Plus system. And you see the HR talent system that's pulled out, and those items that were originally part of the frontline solution systems that did not integrate as fully as we liked are being pulled out and being replaced with the unified talent system replacement. And then the additional slides that follow just go into more detail of the 6 areas that were identified from the council. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Superintendent, anything to add before we have questions from board members?
Thank you. I just, and thank you, Chief Riley. I just wanted to make sure that as a follow-up, just as we did with the last audit, that we talked about the pre-activities that had already occurred, the existing work that's really occurring intimately between our HR team and our finance team as well, so that as we continue to see the work, we're looking at the work move forward.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from board members? Dr. Moffitt.
Well, thank you, Chief Riley. It's good to hear your voice. You do exist, kind of like that little thing, like she does exist. So thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions. I appreciate, and I did not realize that we solicited the Council of Great City Schools for an RFP. So that was very interesting. And but I'm very curious, and just my question, I'm going to ask it in 1 second, but the board has 3 direct reports: the superintendent, the treasurer, and the internal auditor.
Right.
So my question is, while I appreciate the work of the council, what report has been done by our internal auditor regarding an HR audit? Because I know that some benefits were found, and we're working through that with budget, but I'm very interested in, has the internal auditor that reports directly to the board, has she been included? I know you mentioned that she had been interviewed as part of the council process, but I'm interested in her particular findings for the board's review. Has that been done or solicited?
So to respond to your question, the internal audit was responsible for doing the benefits audit for HR since my arrival. And we've been working closely together on a very consistent cadence since the benefits audit has been completed. So we're giving constant updates to Lauren in her capacity as the internal auditor regarding our next steps, findings, and working towards making sure that we clean up those areas that were concerns that were found in the audit. As it relates to this particular HR audit, the RFP was submitted, and so we did have those companies to bid on the audit, and it was Council of Great City Schools who was awarded the response. Lauren was invited from the council to be interviewed, and so she provided various information that was anonymous to me. They were, that was done in an anonymous fashion from the council. So she was invited and did provide input to the council from her lens and her expertise as the internal audit. But as it relates to the actual HR talent work from the audit, she has not been involved in that side because she has been solely involved on the work of benefits.
Okay, so maybe that's an area that she can look at as well, efficiency of the HR department. Because I noticed that you said that there were a couple of areas in slide 17 that the internal auditor was understanding the efficiency of the current processes with regard to info systems. So I'm just wondering, maybe we could have her assist on a broader level, the HR audit as well. I do have one more question. What's the current, if this is around staffing, because I'm concerned with our upcoming budget concerns that we're increasing staffing in this particular area, and we need it, but I'm just wondering, what has the highest number of employees been that have worked in HR? So I'm asking that question because we had a slide about the ratios, the 143 to 1. So, and we're at around 36,000 students. Do you happen to know what our highest number of employees have been to our highest number of student capacity? So I guess, let me rephrase my question. Students for, or 7 FTEs for 147 to 1 and 36,000 students and 6,500 employees. Have we have been higher? Have we had more staffing in this department the more students we've had?
I don't want to misspeak, so I want to do some digging on the team with the team to see what we've had in the past. But as I mentioned earlier, previously HR and talent was separated. So these numbers include the combination of both sides of the house together. So, I mean, it's been shared with me that it's the largest number of individuals that we've had collectively over time, but keeping in mind that this does include other areas that do not play a part into our onboarding, our recruiting, or our staffing. So I will get that number to you, Board Member Moffitt.
And for, on this particular slide 15, where you're speaking of 7 FTEs, that's the addition of how many positions for school year 24?
7 additional positions.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, I'm confused. So it's 7 additional positions, or it's a total, wait a minute, it's 7, you're requesting 7 additional positions?
Correct.
For your department, okay. And how many have we, the board approved 3 already, is that right?
That was approved in our, when we asked specific for certain positions to be added several months ago, I think back in September.
I think it was like August or September, yes. And you're requesting 4 additional, or 3?
No, there were additional budget positions that were already in the budget that we were not asking for additional. There were additional pieces that were not ever filled. So there were positions that we did come to the board and ask for permission to go ahead and fill those positions. Those were additional.
Okay.
So if I may clarify, there is not an additional ask right now. This is what's already in for this year. It has already been approved.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Any other questions from board members? Mrs. Weinberg, followed by Ms. Bolton.
Yes. Thank you, Board Member Moffitt. I was going to actually ask that same question regarding the auditor, the audit done by the audit committee. So thank you for clarifying that. I did have a couple questions on slide 6, where we are talking about the initial concerns regarding paycheck errors. I wanted to know, moving forward, what would be the steps, or what do you think, what type of data will you collect to obviously decrease this? Because that has been a huge, really main concern. I know I get lots of emails as a board member regarding paycheck errors.
Thanks for that question. So in regards to any process procedures that's been put in place, it really does begin with making sure that we are entering the correct information on the front end in the pay assignment for the particular employee, whether that's a new employee, an existing employee, or a change for the employee status. Once that is completed, that information does get down in a drop file that is going over to FinTech. And then so there needs to be an additional step of validation that has been a problem for us in the past, of identifying who is responsible for validating the data, which is why the data team build out has been so important to us, so that we have individuals separate from the individuals inputting the information. We have almost an unbiased group of eyes that are looking at what's been inputted to make sure that cross-reference is accurate before it goes over to the treasurer's team and FinTech and payroll before they can hit the button to send. One thing that we have done, and this is not something new since my arrival, this is something that's been continuing since I've been here, which has been the payroll call centers on days that we know there's been really big pushes or big changes. If there's any bonuses that are going out or anything like that, we've always set up a payroll call center so that there can be someone there dedicated to answer any questions. And we've done that either one day setup or sometimes 2 days that we are there for individuals to answer any questions. And then that information, if we find any errors, goes back to the same team for them to work and clean up any of those errors. So we also are identifying specific techs, HR techs, whose sole responsibility will be for the cleanup of these types of items, because as it stands currently and has it been standing in the past, that the HR techs are responsible for multiple things and no one has had a specific identified task of cleanup of those items.
Thank you. And I have one other question. I just want for clarification on slide 26. What is the launching of the principal advisory team?
We've heard very clearly from our principals, our school-based leaders, as well it came out in the audit, principals not feeling like they have had an opportunity to be supportive with the HR practices, specifically onboarding, offers, and the timelines that it takes for a person to get from application to hired. So the goal is to make sure that we are working through our CAS department, our CAS organization, to identify principals who are interested in working with us to review our revised processes, our documents, our checklist for any individuals that are onboarding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the report. Appreciate it. Kind of informing members of the community that indeed HR as well as transportation were the two areas or departments that we actually put on the superintendent's overall quasi-evaluation as a place to focus. So we felt so strongly that this needed to be improved. So good that you're working toward that. Just a couple of things. There's the person that is taking care of benefits within HR. Does that person report directly to you?
No, that person reports directly to my director of talent acquisition and staffing.
I would really encourage, obviously I can't intercede or anything, but I would, as a person that doesn't want to sit through a community audit committee meeting again where the word benefits, that's the B word, in the audit committee, it ever comes back. So that just, I'm sure you'll obviously exercise a great deal of oversight on that. I notice in one place, the labor relations person is listed as a manager, and then he or she is listed as a director on another page. I don't know if that's a holdover from DSL or the DSL experience, but knowing that we're facing master contract negotiations, not just reopeners, but language, it might be something to be thinking about as to elevate that if that's within the budget or within anybody's planning to a director position instead of a manager position.
Received. We did add the director of employee labor relations, and that individual did leave the district, which left us with a vacancy for last year. The manager has stepped up and done a tremendous job in that lane, but we will take that in consideration.
That'd be great. Just because we are facing these negotiations, I think, and I think that would be helpful. Do we have any idea how in the world Boston can have so few people doing their HR? I mean, that is an outlier, and somebody, I'll pay for the plane fare for somebody to go there. They have 5,000 employees, and they have 48,000 kids and 30, I don't know. This is pretty remarkable. Obviously, they must have a different kind of organizational chart. Like you were saying, some of what we do isn't even counted into our total. So, but I don't know, perhaps the superintendent has a network in Boston?
I actually do, and they do
sure.
have some separations in terms of who does what in terms of the departments. I think one thing that's also important about these slides is that these numbers, as we also shared with the Council of Great City Schools when they shared it with us, these numbers represent just numbers. They don't talk about efficiencies at all. And so in terms of thinking about that, it's really important that we look at the number. Our goal is to get to as efficient as possible, not just getting to the point of trying to meet the ratios that are here, but making sure that we are maximizing the support that we can provide to our staff based on the staff that we have. So I do appreciate the support the board provided for us this year in terms of the positions that were requested, because it will allow us to continue to streamline the work that's being done.
Thank you. And then the last two things, I'm glad to see the focus on licensure. I think that's important all the way through the system. I think that's important. And then finally, this collaboration between the treasurer's office and the HR folks. It's very important that the district and staff understand that indeed HR is under the superintendent, but there are these crossovers. And whether that's where some of the issue is or whether that's where some of the successes are, I'm not sure. But I think just because it's a lot of money, we tend to think that it's within the treasurer's purview rather than the superintendent. So it's glad to see the crossover emphasis and teaming, but people need to kind of keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Other comments from board members? Vice President Craig.
So, again, I will echo everyone's thank you for your presentation today, because, again, I think it's always important for us to stress that while the district's focus is on making sure our students get the best quality education they can get, the way we do that is by having a staff that's supported and processes that are in place. And so I want to hit just a couple of things to kind of get some clarity. I know there's a discussion around employee development, but there is a difference between employee development and succession planning. Because we can invest a lot of effort into keeping folks up to date at where they are, but the potential for them to grow within the district is another space of how you recruit talent, is our own internal. And so I just wanted to hear any thoughts you might have with regard to some of the discussion around the need for more, or need for what we're doing to develop employees, not just for the job they're in, but for the next job they might want to be in.
Good question. So there's two areas that I can think of right off the top of my head that we've been working on. And one is inside of the leadership development and school-based pipelines lane. So we have identified a program for our aspiring assistant principals, as well as programming for our aspiring principals. So in the aspiring assistant principals, there's two groups of individuals. One group that are of people who are having the credentials already, and they could be ready within 1 year. Should there be a unique identified place for them, a perfect match. And then the individuals that may need additional coursework or additional testing, those individuals are in the 2-year program for the Aspiring Assistant Principal program. So that is one way that we're trying to think about individuals who want to matriculate outside of their particular classroom environment. Additionally, we also have programming through our Employee Effectiveness and Development Department, where we are looking at training and development for our central office staff. And that includes various topics around leading individuals, and specifically how do you promote some of the skills that you may need to develop and refine, if that's something that you're looking to do. And so that is kicking off in November, and it's something that's a carryover prior to my arrival, which was what's originally called the Job-alikes. And so we're picking that back up, and there's been a revising a process to make sure that we offer that to our employees. And we partner also with CFT as it relates to the teacher leadership cohorts that they offer. So that is also in partnership with the Employee Effectiveness and Development Office that works directly with CFT to identify leadership opportunities for our classroom teachers, because we recognize that there are some individuals that love the classroom and that's what we want them to do. But we want to make sure that they are leaders inside their school buildings and providing them the tools collaboratively with CFT to make that happen.
Yeah, and again, I think all of those are awesome opportunities to truly build folks up for those next opportunities. While we would love to make sure those next opportunities are within our district, we recognize that sometimes that there are folks are ready when they're ready. And so, but the other point that I think this may go a little bit into the conversation about the cross collaboration is I think there's a lot of what we're doing in HR these days that is very tech heavy and very tech driven and very data heavy. And making sure that we have systems in place that are not just a carryover of this is how we always did the system, but to make sure we have technology that works to make it easier for someone to apply, get put in a position to verify that things are correct, that when someone clicks on something that it actually turns on for them, those type of things. Mm-hmm. Again, I think that gets into the conversation around why we don't want the B word said at any more audit committee meetings. Is in large part because we want to have systems in place so that you don't have to go back and say, did it get in there? Did it stay in there? Did it not? And I think that's also gets into that effectiveness and efficiencies. So, again, I think it's really great that we're using technology more and trying to make sure we're using the right technology. I think you spoke to this with regards to technology not working with some of the PowerSchool tools and how we have to rethink about some of those things. That's the type of stuff that I think will make us more effective and more efficient, because a lot of folks who I have heard from who've tried to work for the district, their biggest complaint is it takes so long. You have to click on this link and you have to find that link, and then got to remember which one you clicked on here to go back. And it's difficult, and the less difficult it is, the more likely we are to get some folks to come to the district. And then the last thing I'll just say real quick is also recognizing our district is a great climate for a lot of our teachers to be able to succeed. And some of the areas around us don't always have those same climates. And so making sure that we are reaching out to our spaces around us at times to make sure that those folks who may have the talents and skills that are near us get back into the district or come to the district. Because I do know we still have vacancies, we still have needs. And so I just want to make sure that we're also looking at some folks who might be local or in town who would be great talent to snag up if we can.
Thank you. Receive that.
Thank you, Vice President Craig. Anyone who's not spoken yet have anything they want to share? Ms. Wagner, and then I'll go after you're finished.
Thank you, thank you. So I just wanted to say that it was no secret that I took exception to some of the things I read in the audit report. And I've addressed those with the superintendent and with Chief Riley. I just wanted to publicly acknowledge Chief Riley and how improved the behaviors between the two teams are working. You see on the list that they have 13 different times they connect during a month. We're just adding a little bit more structure and support to those and accountability so that the progress keeps moving forward. I found Chief Riley to be incredibly responsive and helpful when issues come up. She's always available and is great to collaborate with. And so I have a lot of hope for the future. And then I do want to say one of the things that upset me a lot in that audit was when they threw out the statistic about the paycheck errors. Because our payroll department works very, very hard, and they felt like it was a slap in the face to them. We've been working for years on identifying the root causes of payroll errors. And while the data integrity of what is being sent over to the payroll department is a big part of it, it's not the whole. There is, at 96% of the errors on a paycheck occur outside the payroll department. I think we'd identified that 40% came from data that's in the HR system, but the rest of it is out in the departments and the schools making their own reporting mistakes. So it's a big project to work on, and we've made tremendous progress. We've had QI teams around Schedule E errors. We've had QI teams on position control, which if the budget's not in the right place, you're not going to pay them in a timely manner. So we've made tremendous progress, and I really want to thank Chief Riley for her efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Wagner. I was just going to share some gratitude as well, and I'll be very brief. I think this is my 4th year on the board, and I think some challenges around either payroll or benefits or something in this space has come up as often as anything else. Possible exception of buses. But I echo, what Ms. Bolton was saying, that's why those two areas were areas of focus on the evaluation for this past school year. And so I'm delighted to see the focus and attention. And also that there is, two things can be true at once. I think one, there are things that make our community and our school system different from other places that we might see around the country. And there is quite often important things that we can learn by benchmarking what we do here against what people are doing in other cities so that we learn from that experience and then apply those lessons to make a difference here in Cincinnati. So thank you and express deep gratitude.
Thank you.
Superintendent.
The last thing that I'll add, just as for two brief updates. One, the benefits audit that was referenced earlier was a second follow-up in terms of benefits. When we transitioned into the district, there had been a benefits audit that had been done. And to Board Member Bolton's point, the audit committee was getting reports on the benefits audit, and it was not until the transition that we realized that the reports that were being provided actually had not been done. And so we then at that time worked with our internal auditor, requested an update. She provided that update for us. And since that time, there's been a lot of, and our treasurer used QI, quality improvement teams is what we call it. There's been a lot of quality improvement conversations and teaming around making sure that we're moving forward. So the RFP that was done for the benefits component of it came directly from the information that was provided as a part of the benefits audit in terms of next steps. So that's one. I think the second thing that I would add, and I also want to offer support for both our treasurer and our chief of human resources and talent for the work that's happening together, because this did not happen overnight. So when we start thinking about the amount of time that we go back, we look at the number of audits that we've already had in previous audits, regardless of what the audit has been, there's been some of the same information that has been shared, but there has been very little information provided about how implementation was done. So our goal right now is to move from this is just the information for where we are, but to move forward in terms of implementation. It did not happen overnight. It's already getting better, but it will not be fixed completely overnight. So I just want to make certain that we manage our expectations around that, because it took a long time for us to get here. So thank you to the team, kudos, and we also appreciate the feedback that was provided by the council.
Thank you, Superintendent. I believe Ms. Jones has the last comment.
The only reason why I'm speaking because everybody else did, so I felt out of place, so I had to say something. But I do want to reiterate or repeat the fact that I looked in here and you mentioned it about hiring the manager of licensure and restructure, which is such a important function for our district. So I appreciate that. But then I also, this is my last comment. And this is nothing against superintendent, who does a great job when she presents, but it's nice to have a member of the leadership team to present so that we get a better feel and understanding for them as leaders. So I really appreciate that, Superintendent, and I thank you. It was a great presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you, everyone. With that, Chief Riley, thank you. We'll move on to our next item here. So we're moving from presentations discussion, which was light this evening, to resolutions, which is the opposite of light. And so we have a first topic here around the vision, mission, and forecast. And as we get into this, I wanted to do a couple things. I wanted to do three things. First, just recap some history for where we've been on this. Second, I wanted to just voice over what people have on board docs and received last week as it relates to vision, mission, and forecast. And then last, I wanted to share how we're going to move forward with making some decisions on this evening. So first part, just the recap of where we've been. We engaged the ALMA advisory group some months ago to help our board, in close collaboration with our superintendent, do a refresh on our vision and mission and adopt for the first time a forecast, a statement about where we hope the district will be in the future. That is aspirational, but also motivating and clear, and we hope impactful. And as part of that engagement, the ALMA advisory group engaged thousands of members of our community, both through an online survey and also through other smaller, more intimate engagements, including several meetings with our board. One of the things the ALMA advisory group shared back with us were a series of demographics on who was responding and who was engaging with the feedback around our vision, mission, and forecast. One of the things that was really encouraging was that the demographics of the people who were engaging matched the demographics of the CPS community. So we were hearing not just from many people, but from many people who were a representation of the community that we represent. And so with that, they shared with us a proposal for a vision, mission, and forecast that had a few choice points in it between some language that could go one way or could go another. And then we had some board discussions about that work product from the ALMA advisory group and discussed that final recommendation at a board meeting in September. At that, and I'm segueing here into an overview of what people have in board docs and received last week. So what people have there are three different versions of what could be a vision, mission, and forecast. The first version is where we last had this project at our last board meeting. And this is what we received from the end of that engagement with ULMA, as our board made just a few decisions about, if you remember a couple versions ago, there was choose A or B, like we talked about that as a group. That's what people have in version A. There was a request the last time this was on our agenda to make additional changes. And so what we did was say, okay, if you would like to propose something different, please share in writing with our board office what you'd like to propose, and we will put that on the agenda for our next discussion at board meeting. So that's what you have in items in version B and version C. We received two sets of language, one from board member Jones and one from board member Bolton. And so you'll see that version B reflects the suggestion of board member Jones, and version C reflects the suggestions of board member Bolton. Just to make it easy for people to see what is the same and what is different across all three versions, anything that is unhighlighted is the same in all three versions. Anything that's different is highlighted in yellow. So you can see most of it's the same, not highlighted. Changes that were submitted are put on there in yellow. So I said I was going to do three things. First thing was share where we've been. Second was share an overview of what people have in their board docs that came out last week. And now entering the last section, which is a preview of how we're going to work through this evening. So what I want to do is I want to start by inviting board member Jones and then board member Bolton to share anything they'd like to. They don't have to, but share anything they'd like to about what they submitted. And then open it up for every board member who would like to share their perspective on these three different versions that they have. Give them a chance to do so. And then we will see where they are. If we have arrived at a consensus, which I think is certainly always preferable, that's great. And if we haven't, I think we do need to move this forward. And I'm going to propose that we do some making of motions and some voting to figure out where the majority of the board is. Any questions about what I was just sharing? Where we've been, what people have in front of them, how we're going to move through this evening. Okay, so then we'll start with board member Jones, followed by board member Bolton.
Okay. The changes that I made, the forecast in its original version, I think I said at the last meeting that I was pleased with that. And then Ms. Bolton offered her suggestions. And as I read through that, my first thought was that for me personally, I thought a lot of that was already covered and was trying to figure out a way to incorporate things that may be pulled from her version to add. But my overall intent was to try to keep it as simple, straightforward, and succinct. And I hope that that's what that did. Now, I am seeing one thing that I added that wasn't highlighted. And so it is on my version, the last bullet, it says our district will partner with the region's economic, political, and cultural decision makers.
That's right. Thank you.
So that's an addition.
Thank you,
So other
Ms. Jones.
than that, again, I pulled some of the content from what Ms. Bolton was suggesting and added it in here, but I did not change. I think she wanted to change all of the bullets, I believe. Well, she can speak to her own, but I just felt like it was a lot more succinct and it flowed better in terms of that. But that's all. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. So everyone will imagine, I hope, that last
Ms.
bullet,
Jones.
Ms. Jones, I'll get to Ms. Bolton, I apologize. The last bullet we'll imagine is being highlighted. Thank you. But before we hear from Ms. So Dr. Moffat's asking if we can put the attachment that's on board docs on the screen so that folks at home can follow along. Thank you, Dr. Moffat. Thank you, Rob. Ms. Bolton.
Thank you. I think it's great progress, at least if I'm reading this correctly, that the vision and the mission on all three options are the same. So I think that's unanimity, not even just consensus. So I think that's great. On the third version, where there's capital letters, that's me trying to point out how it changed, you know, again, arguing with myself, happens all the time. What I presented at the last board meeting, this is a change from that. And whatever was changed from what I presented at the last board meeting is in capital letters. I do feel strongly that we needed to incorporate the green sustainability. I don't think that appeared anywhere, and I think that is part of the future with our students and with our staff and certainly with our community. I kept, the only one I didn't change was the third bullet because I remember Member Weinberg saying she liked number 3, so I said, well, that might be 2 votes there on number 3, but the other ones I tried to have complete sentences. Ms. Jones and I we've had this battle since even before the equity policy. She is
2016.
2016. I like longer sentences and she likes the very succinct and very edited and direct, and that's great. Somewhere in between, it's good, but I would just submit for folks to look over the forecast on all 3 and see what people believe. I think we should be able to adopt these this evening, and I do like, I appreciate Ms. Jones incorporating some of the stuff that we added and talked about, and I just prefer the form of the complete sentences in the bullets. So I think this is good work, and I look forward to the adoption of our strategic plan tonight too.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Looking across versions A, B, and C, Mrs. Weinberg, Dr. Moffett, Vice President Craig, are there any comments that you all would like to share?
I think the only comments that I would take is I did obviously review over Board Member Bolton's additions. I'm going to have to say that I do like them, but I'm going to go with version B. I like version B a little bit better because it seems to just be very direct and very, it has a shortened version to it. If possible, maybe taking one particular piece out of Board Member Bolton's and then adding it to version B would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Dr. Moffett or Vice President Craig?
Almost echo Mrs. Weinberg there. I think they're good in both, and I think there's I'm a little bit more of the fan of brevity than others, but I would say that I think adding something to the green sustainability for Mrs. Bolton's point there, or Ms. Bolton's point there, would be helpful to add into that context of those things that the district will be nationally recognized for, because I do think that's something that we've worked really hard at especially over the last few years to maintain and expand in our district, and that's not something every district does. So I think that being recognized for our commitment to, or our development and growth of, or whatever the language makes it work, but I think that's one of the things, that would be one thing I would add to B, and I think the rest of it are somewhat encompassing. Both are included in the language, just different phrasing and different ways of saying it in a lot of ways.
Thank you, Vice President Craig. Dr. Moffett.
So I kind of like both of them. I think that they say the same thing. It's just that one says it with brevity, the other one doesn't. I think that operational efficiency and fiscal responsibility is the same as Eve's last one, maybe. I do like pointing out green sustainability because I think that is very clear that that's an intention from the board, and we need to make sure that we state that. I do like how Board Member Jones said that, you know, our district will partner with the region's economic, political, and cultural decision makers. I think Board Member Bolton just explained it more fully, that we're going to partner among the multiple decision makers who determine the region's economic and cultural development. So I like the fact that they both say the same thing. I would add green sustainability. I think that Board Member Bolton's number 2, if you could go down, Rob, stay with me, on the third one, her number 2 bullet. I think that that's significant because we face some pretty tough challenges coming up economically. And I think it's beneficial to demonstrate to the community that we recognize that these are challenges and we want them to partner with us. Because I don't know if the community has always felt that their partnership was important to us and that it's something that the board level needs to maintain. So I think we should state that we recognize that there are challenges. We're committed to working on that. We have, as an urban district, we've got some pretty succinct challenges that are very different from our counterparts. And so I think to say that is important. I'm a little confused about putting in the first bullet because I wonder if, are we talking about our system of schools there, Board Member Bolton? I didn't exactly know, are we talking about establishing an individual plan for our students? I wasn't exactly sure where that one was going, but I thought you might be able to offer a little bit more more explanation because I like that, but I don't know what we're trying to say about all schools annually accomplish the uniquely designed learning pathways and objectives. I didn't understand that one, so that was one of the ones I wanted you to explain. I wanted to add the green schoolyard, the green sustainability, because I think that also demonstrates a partnership with the city. And then I think it's important, although I don't know if I would say it this way, the fourth bullet down, that we are duly elected school board members, and our charge is to protect and preserve local control of the schools. I don't know if I would say it that way, but I think it's important to recognize to the community that we understand that you put us here to preserve your values, and we will act accordingly. So I like that. I don't like how that's worded, but I do like the recognition that school board members are significant and we have a role and we are elected. So I think that that's important. I don't know if I like how that's worded, but the first one and the fourth one, if you could just kind of elaborate on what you're thinking. I think we should kind of combine them both, but.
The first and
the first one with the learning pathways and objectives, and then the wording part of the duly elected, that part.
Thank you, Dr. Moffett. Hearing this, I have a proposal.
Question.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Ms. Jones.
I appreciate all the comments,
Sure.
but I think we're all operating on a different definition of forecast. Can somebody help me when we talk about forecast? Because some of the comments are just, some of the statements are just inherent to me in the work that we do. So when we talk about forecast, we're talking about future outlook, advancement, and whatever. So
if you bear with me, Ms. Jones, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the definition that we used earlier in the project. And what the district, so in the engagement so far, the way we've defined forecast is what the district will look like locally, regionally, and nationally when we are successful. And I'm pulling this from the presentation from the August 28th board meeting, if anybody's trying to find it. Ms. Jones, does that answer your question?
yes.
So let me try this because I think we're actually meaningfully closer than I thought we might be when I came in to the meeting tonight, which is lovely. We might get this done, approve a strategic plan, and send everybody home in a reasonable hour, or we might not. We'll see. So here's.
Let's get it done. Get it done.
Okay, here's what we're going to propose. Bear with me because I think what will be helpful is if we could have on the screen version B, which is what we currently have. And what I think might get us there is in this section towards the bottom where it says our district will be nationally recognized for. I'm going to add a bullet, but then I'm going to shorten it in a second. So we could add Our district will be nationally recognized for, among these other attributes, its commitment to green sustainability. So just hold that in a second. So the proposal is we add that bullet. Then, if you notice towards the top, there are 3 bullets here about talent. It says CPS will be a top attractor, et cetera. Then there's a sub-bullet on attracts and a sub-bullet on retains. I think we could replace that with the bullet that Eve has around people choosing CPS. And I think Eve's is both shorter and more inspiring than the version we have currently. So we could win on 2 fronts. So what I was thinking would capture, I'm not totally sure about the last thought about local representation. We should come back to that. But the recap would be to add that bullet on green sustainability under national recognition, and then to swap out the 3 talent bullets that we currently have for the 1 talent bullet from Ms. Bolden's.
Which bullet is that you're talking about from Ms. Bolton's?
Yeah, so if you could you scroll down?
It's
It's the one that we were discussing, the second bullet. Educators and others committed to the goals and willing to meet the challenge of public schools in an urban environment will choose CPS as their career home of service and advancement. I think it ties in nicely to some of the comments Vice President Craig was making about the HR audit earlier.
I have a question.
Dr. Moffitt.
So I don't know if it could go underneath there, but I like her 3rd bullet, which is our students and graduates will be sought by both public and private employers. I feel like it could go under talent also, but I mean, if we're talking about internal talent, I also want to add teachers and staff. But I was thinking maybe we could just talk about the talent of our students and the talent of our teachers and staff under that bullet. Just take those 2 and 3.
Well, but it's the bullet 3 under B says that.
Bullet 3 talks about students. Bullet 2 talks about educators.
Well, I'm
B3?
saying bullet 3
On B.
talks about,
I think we have some of that in the, if you scroll up, Rob, to version B. And if you look at our graduates will be highly sought after.
I was suggesting.
So let's I think we should address the recommendation that Dr. Moffitt is making also. I just want to check that I'm hearing no objection to adding green sustainability as I wrote it under our district national recognition for, and no disagreement to CPS will be swapping out those 3 bullets for the Ms. Bolton bullet on talent. No disagreement on mission. No disagreement on vision at the top of the page.
Right.
Let's just take a deep breath and acknowledge all of the things that we have just gotten done, which is really great. And we're very close. Okay, and I'm gonna move on. Yeah. So Dr. Moffitt, what's your last one? Can you say again just the idea that you had a second ago?
Get that one more time. I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
No, you had an additional idea that I didn't want to get lost. Can you just say it one more time?
Sure. I was saying the 3rd bullet, our graduates. I liked how Eve said our students and graduates will be sought by public and blah, blah, blah. I was saying replace her 3rd bullet with just what she said. It just spelled it out, but or add it because it was talking about students. That's what Board Member Jones was saying.
So there's something about Eve's that reads a little bit more inspiringly than the 3 that are on there, and it's also another make it shorter move. Ms. Jones?
I disagree with that. I think mine is a little more succinct. The concept is still the same.
Well, then if people can live with this, we've gotten a whole lot of consolidation here, and hopefully people can see important parts of what they care about reflected in it. And superintendent, I hope it doesn't, I think it speaks to values and commitments we have and doesn't take us into an unhelpful direction. Okay, any last comments before we move on then? Ms. Bolden.
Yeah, I would agree with your suggestion. Those 2 items about the green sustainability and then also the swapping out the choosing the public. To answer Dr. Moffitt's point, somewhere in the very earliest list we had, there was a phrase, and maybe it's still somewhere here, the success will not be determined by tests alone, but by the And that's,
Okay.
that is, that's just what it said.
Mhm.
And so I was trying to build in stuff that's come out of policy and state law
Okay.
now about the requirements, and the superintendent can correct me on this. And I know it's something that we've talked about in policy and used to talk about in student achievement. I think it was Mr. Morosky that's emphasized those individual learning pathways.
Right.
And I think the superintendent informed me in the midst of thinking I was really out there saying remarkable things. The state had already said it. So that's that individual learning pathway. I think that goes with the whole child concept. And I think for which we're famous, and hopefully we are. But I also think that it speaks to what is really being demanded by the state, at least as I understand the law. So that's explaining that first one. Beyond that, the suggestions I think Ben made about incorporating, I can live with it. Carolyn Scott and Member Jones has it all about we're full partners in decision making and whatever. I think that's captured. I know that's something we want. And so I think with Ben's suggestions, I would probably fight a little bit for some part of that first part.
Well, President.
Thank you, Ms. Bolden. And Dr. Moffitt.
It looks like, Rob, if you go to B, that is Board Member Jones's number 4, or some semblance of that, individualized support and success for the whole student. I don't know if we want to take anything from Board Member Bolden's statement, but it kind of sounds like that's what that's saying. Does that recognize that to you?
Yeah, because I have in there about the test results.
Yeah, I think Dr. Moffitt's point is well taken. I think that it seems to speak to exactly the same set of concerns. And so I would propose that, per your point, that we keep that bullet in there. I think it addresses 99.999% of the things we've talked about. And I would suggest that we call this good and move on. Any concerns with us doing so?
The only thing it's missing is the test scores piece to say that students are not.
That's true.
That's also in there. If you look at the.
Okay. Then it looks like it's good. Looks like it's the same.
All right. Good job. Thank you. All right. So that gets us some important things that go in what's currently blank in the PDF of the next topic, which is our strategic plan. So, Superintendent, thank you for sharing the document with all of us last week. Is there anything here? I don't know that there is, but is there anything that you'd like to voice over?
There isn't. I just brought another hard copy of the same document that I sent previously, and this is the same one that you've received prior to now. It's just a little more cleaned up, a little more camera ready, and we're just waiting for the goals, waiting for the mission, vision, and forecast so we can make it a completed document and start socializing with our community.
So I think thank you very much, Superintendent. And you'll see if folks didn't look at it ahead of time, on the very back of the cover page, there's a mission with a blank, a vision with a blank, and forecast with a blank, which we can now update given our last discussion. And I think, Superintendent, the hope is that we will approve this plan this evening. Is that accurate? Great. So before we call for a motion, a second, and a vote, well, no, let's do this the right way. So Robert's rules, we should have someone motion this on the floor. We'll see if there's a second, and then if there is, we can have any discussion on it. Is there a motion to adopt the recommended strategic plan?
So moved.
Thank you, Vice President Craig. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, both Mrs. Weinberg and Ms. Jones. We'll let Ms. Wagner figure out who that actually was. And then now, any discussion on the proposed strategic plan? Ms. Bolden.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for this draft versus I think the last one that we saw. This one is somewhat different. These are simple things, strategies and actions. I think it would be good for the public to actually see on that title page that this is a strategic plan, and called that. I think that would be helpful. The other, on the next page, it says forecast. instead of forecast. It might be actually truer to the reality, but I think it'd be better if we just said forecast.
Take the S off.
Take the S off.
Page
I don't
2.
know, it sounds like a tall order.
No, I don't
Asking a
know.
lot.
Is there still time?
Asking a lot.
You know, I've always disputed the order of our 5 strategies, but that's my weirdness. That's okay. All those things are great, and I like that they're related to the goals and the guardrails. Again, I appreciate the footnote on we are all educators, because we were kind of working under the assumption that was just something that was generated by discussion, which it was, but there's actually organizations called We Are All Educators, so I appreciate the footnote here. So I don't normally like having anybody else be a part of our strategic plan, but I think it's okay. Strong roots, I would like on the strong roots supporting new growth. I like that page a lot.
Where are you, Eve?
Appendix, I'm now on the
Okay.
appendix, and I'm not taking my appendix out or anything.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Well, I'm trying to be fast and brief, and I'm doing it too fast. I liked everything that you mentioned here, but I would suggest that for the strong roots, I think there is an incredibly long history in this district on early childhood. And I didn't see it there, and sort of felt that that would be something to include. You have the school-based health centers, you've got the CLCs, and that's the only thing I would add, because we don't have to talk about our high schools, and people know about our high schools and how they're so important to us. But I do think early childhood should be added to the strong roots, just because we've been doing that for a very, very long time. I mean, we've been committed to full day kindergarten and all that kind of stuff, and the state's not supporting it. But beyond that, I'm happy.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Other, and I think just to keep track of these and make sure we're going on, I'm hearing no concerns with labeling instead of strategies and actions, strategic plan.
No.
And no concerns with deleting the S in forecasts.
No.
I don't know, let's take
And
a vote on that.
No concerns with, for the absence of any confusion, adding a CPS's commitment to early childhood around supporting strong roots supporting new growth.
Correct.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Any other comments on the proposed strategic plan? Dr. Moffat.
So I don't know, these don't have page numbers, but under the glossaries, we don't have anything under development. We don't have anything under equity index. I think that those things, my suggestion is that they tie into and be linked to policies. For instance, we do have equitable access that should have the policy reference to that, so that there is the ability for people to see that we do have an equity policy. I would also suggest we have a gifted policy that needs to tie into that. Inclusiveness could also be tied into policy as well. Restorative practices, I think that could tie into our discipline policy. PTO, parent teacher, again, that can go into a policy. Local LSDMCs, we have a policy around all of these. The glossary items, I think, could indeed be tied to policy to make it a little stronger. Those particular glossary items are missing. I think that's those kind of those were the ones that I kind of caught overarchingly. I wondered if we were going to, with each of the strategies, somehow tie in where those align with regard to the board, again, policies and or resolutions or things that we are definitely committed to. And I didn't know, that was kind of a thought, since I was thinking of linking and maybe not, but I just wanted to make sure that the community and people that pull our strategic plan recognize that it's tied to and rooted in some of our board policies that we believe in. So again, that was just adding those links, those definitions, and then those links to the definitions. And then if there is an area in the strategy where they could be linked as well, to put that in. Yeah.
Superintendent. Thank you, Dr. Moffitt.
Yeah, no concerns about identifying the definitions and the policies where they would link. In terms of the actual portions of the strategic plan, I think that may be a bit more challenging depending on where the policies are overarchingly, because there's so many policies that are interconnected, but taking the recommendation to make sure that we take the definitions and link the policy to them if one does exist.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Anything from Vice President Craig or Ms. Jones? I don't have anything myself. Okay, so let's just keep stock of where we are. We have a resolution prepared tonight to adopt a strategic plan. I think the version that's on the table, if these are friendly amendments to our motion maker, all the items we've discussed so far, and I would just say inclusive of adding policy references in the glossary. Are there any other points of discussion on the resolution as amended? We cut the S. We made very short. Yeah, it's out of there. Okay, in that case, Ms. Wagner, would you call our vote, please?
Bolton, excuse me, Ms. Bolton,
As revised?
as revised.
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt,
Yes, with the revisions, and then if you could send us the revisions, that'd be great.
Mrs. Weinberg,
Yes.
President Lindy.
Yes. Okay, good job, everybody. We have adopted a vision, mission, and forecast. We have adopted a strategic plan. We're gonna, yes, Ms. Wagner.
I'm sorry, you didn't do the vote on the vision and the mission?
We didn't do the vote, and Ms. Bruckner was kindly texting me a question about, are we going to vote on that? We certainly can. I thought we had gotten to a version where everybody was at a consensus on it. We can go back and take it. Is it helpful to take a vote?
Yes.
Okay. So then let's just, Rob, can you pull up those three versions again? All right, so our version on which we are going to vote starts with version B and makes the following changes. It replaces the second bullet and the two sub-bullets underneath that with version C's bullet on talent. We can see that one there. We've looked at this before. It adds underneath our district will be nationally recognized for. It adds its commitment to green sustainability. And then, can someone help me with what's there? We had this last final discussion. Dr. Moffitt, was there an additional change we made? We saw the piece on test scores is in there. We saw the piece about.
We were going to discuss the elected piece, but we never did. But it's fine. We don't have to.
Okay. So with those revisions, Ms. Jones.
I thought we said we would leave that one as it is because it mentioned about working with the broader community. We were
Correct.
gonna leave, so
we're not,
change.
nope. So the only things we're changing, we added the green sustainability piece underneath national recognition, and we replaced the 3 bullets on talent here with the 1 bullet on talent from Ms. Bolton's. Okay. Ms. Wagner, would you call that vote, please? Or do we need to, so let's, who's going to motion this, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Vice President Craig. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Now, Ms. Wagner, will you call the vote, please?
Ms. Bolton,
Aye.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt,
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg,
Yes.
President Lindy.
Yes. Any other requests for more voting? No, we're good. Okay. So we're in the resolution section. We have tackled item 1. We have tackled item 2. We are now on to item 3, which is a resolution amending board policy bylaws. I would like to start this section by sharing with everyone that in reviewing the materials for today's meeting, I caught at least one what seems, in talking with our general counsel, to have been just a clerical mismatch in versions between the one that was originally on board docs posted last week and our most recent board discussion. It's been fixed. So if anybody looked at it, later on or in the last several hours today, what you saw is accurate. I haven't gone through everything, but I did see that one. Happy to move evening, given that there was at least one kind of looks like version control issue. I wanted to propose that we actually wait until Mike is back at our next meeting to vote on the batch of these, which would also give us a chance just to check to see if there's anything else that was not matching the most recent version. If people feel differently and would like to do it tonight, I'm also open to that. I just wanted to know that there was at least one issue that we caught, but the version that's on board docs is accurate. Ms. Bolton.
Yes, I don't mind delaying this, but it would be good if General Counsel can tell us what that is, and then also tell us the color coding so that we can better understand it. And if you could explain the order change, just so we have that in our mind as to why and how we did that.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. Can you hear me, Ron? Yeah. Thank you. So the versions that are posted online include all the revisions that have been made, recommended by policy, approved by the board. The only additional work that the policy committee did at the September meeting related to the sort of consent agenda, and the policy committee made some recommendations there, but other than that, no other substantive changes have been made to the bylaws. There is a substantial reorganization of the bylaws that has been done. That's based on Board Member Bolton's recommendations, approved both by the policy committee and by the board for us to go forward. So the version that you'll look at that is posted on board docs now is substantially different in ordering and in numbering, but not in content. The blue highlighting on the most recent version that's posted on board docs represents provisions that have changed location, okay, but not changed in content. And the note that Board President Lindy caught was in the definitions section. An earlier version had previously discussed by the policy committee in June had deleted a section related to the definition of request for information, but at several board meetings since then, the board approved that language going back in. So it's the last paragraph relating to request for information. Any other questions?
So if that sounds okay to people, we'll vote on this when we have Mike back. But again, thank you everybody for your efforts on all of this. Ms. Jones.
I read through everything and I'm happy with it and ready to vote, but there were a couple of places, this is very minor. Well, I don't know if it's minor or not, but under the section of orientation where it talks about new board members, is it possible to add a statement about potential onboarding once a person is elected, but they can be brought into the orientation process as needed, or some statement around that? And I wrote it, but I can't find it quickly on here. That it's just to add one short bullet about under orientation to onboard as needed for newly elected board members.
Are you saying the board may choose to, or the board shall?
The board may choose to
conduct an orientation process for new board members following the conclusion of the election.
Yes, that's exactly what I see.
So the proposal, I think that sounds like a great suggestion. And the may gives future boards flexibility to decide they want to do something different.
Yes, and then I have one more. Yes.
So just on this one, are there any concerns from board members for this going in the version? And then from council, I did that quickly. Is that clear enough? Are we out of recording? Great. And then Ms. Jones, you had one more?
Yeah, and then there was one where, if the board didn't approve of this, I'd be fine with that. But it just seemed like the word, just to have continuity and consistency in how we word things. And it's in the section around functions of the board. And it said something about us managing and controlling the schools and things like that, which I thought the choice of words. So I was suggesting governing and legal authority of schools. Something, I can find it and tell you exactly where it is. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
What I wrote down
Or do you
is
need more?
from the language of management and control to the language of governance and legal accountability for.
Governing and, yes, it is 0133. No, I'm sorry, 0134. The third blue paragraph. It says the Board of Education shall have the management and control of all the public schools in the district and the employees, students. Well, and so I was asking if it made sense to change management and control to governing and legal authority of all the public schools.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. It certainly sounds reasonable to me. Any concerns from board members? Ms. Bolden?
No concerns. Is that legal language or something? It doesn't sound like anything we would
It's 4 hours.
It's a great question where it came from.
I was going to ask something similar because that's actually just transferred from 0122. So that's not any addition. We didn't manipulate that. It's just a transfer.
It's just a move.
It
from
comes
the last one.
directly from the.
It says transferred from 0122.
Mr. Hoying, is there a legal reason we couldn't use Member Jones's language?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Question is, do we want to? I mean, it's up to the board.
Sure.
Sounds like a lot of agreement, and that would
I
put
like
us.
it the way it is. I don't understand the difference. What's the purpose of your?
I don't
changing it?
like this management and control. I don't think, that, to me, I don't think that that's what we do, manage. I think we govern, and I think we do have legal authority of the schools, but we don't manage and control.
Vice President Craig?
I was just going to say, I have no problem with the language that is being suggested from Board Member Jones. But
Mrs. Weinberg?
I also don't have a problem with what Board Member Jones is suggesting with the language change.
I have a question.
Dr. Moffett?
So it says, it has a reference to revised code 3313.20. So I'm wondering, what does that code say? Because it could be a reason why it says that before we vote to be changing it. I'm wondering what that code is referencing.
So maybe we could ask our administration to look into that. And then when we come back in our next regularly scheduled board meeting, we can vote on, we can have an answer on the whether there's some issue here we should pay attention to. And then we can vote on the final version.
Thank you.
Mr. Young, any questions?
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to mention is if it's easier for you to read, we've also posted a final version that excludes all the highlighting, all the redlining, all the comments. That is also posted on. So it's sort of accepting all changes.
Great.
That would be the final version.
Okay. So we have moved through the first 3 resolutions, which are the meaty ones. We have a much simpler one, which will come from a member Weinberg.
So I present a resolution approving students eligible for subsidy reimbursement in lieu of transportation for the 2023-2024 school year, and I hope that this is accepted as written.
Thank you, Member Weinberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Moffett. Any discussion on Resolution 4? Ms. Wagner, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Bolton? Mr. Craig?
yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Moffett?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
President Lindy?
Yes. All right, we're moving on to the Superintendents of Schools section of our agenda this evening. Ms. Weinberg, do we have any retirements?
Yes, we have 4. So I would like to announce for civil service, we have Terrence Donahue, a senior accounting technician from the School for Creative and Performing Arts. We have John Gilbert, a custodian at Euler School. We have Jerry Miller, maintenance foreman in facilities management. And then last, we have Frederick Rowland, security assistant 2 at Bond Hill Academy. So we would like to wish these individuals all of the best, and we want to thank them for their service within this district and all that they've done for the students of CPS.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Is there a motion to adopt the recommendations of the superintendent this evening?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice President Craig. Any discussion on the superintendent's recommendations? Hearing none. Ms. Wagner, would you call the vote, please?
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Dr. Moffett?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
President Lindy?
Yes. Is there a motion to adopt is there a revised report this evening or just the report as it stands?
Report as it stands.
Hey, we should celebrate that. That's really great.
Right.
Look at all these wins. Look at all these wins this evening. No, we're gonna keep moving. Okay, is there a motion to adopt the treasurer's report this evening?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice President Craig. Any discussion on the report of the treasurer? Hearing none, Ms. Wagner, would you call the roll?
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Moffett?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
President Lindy?
Yes. Okay, we have just a few items left this evening. We have 2 items under board matters. The first is an update on the Preschool Promise Master Agreement discussion. I'm very, very excited to be able to bring this back to the board. This is the first board meeting we've had since Vice President Craig, myself, the superintendent, the treasurer, and our general counsel did what we said we would do at our last board meeting, which is meet with the parallel folks at Cincinnati Preschool Promise to move forward the master agreement renegotiations. I would invite any of the folks who were at that meeting to share other perspectives they have, but I will share that I thought it was a very good and productive first meeting. We have a second meeting on the calendar for next week. So this is not a process that will drag on forever, but it's one that is very actively moving forward, and I think that is a good thing. What we wanted to share back, and I'm going to ask Vice President Craig to share maybe an example or 2 in a minute, is that we had a good conversation about how, on the one hand, some of the things that were true in 2016 when this effort first passed with the public have not changed at all. There are other things, both from the Preschool Promise perspective and from the CPS perspective, that have likely changed, and that a lot of that comes from learning about what's worked well and has not worked well under this agreement over the last several years. And I think both parties felt, and again, just want to invite anybody who is there and has a different perspective, please share it. But there could be some increased flexibility and evolution from the original agreement that could be helpful for everyone. There was also some thinking that like a good way to operationalize that, we looked at the shared vision statements that the board passed in 2016 and in 2020. So before going to the public for a vote, twice the board approved a shared vision. That one thing we might try to do early on in this is decide whether both parties want any revisions to that shared vision. To the extent that there are, that could then set up a framework to work through the more specific issues that are in the master. So, Mr. Craig, do you want to share any of the examples that you were thinking of?
Yeah, so one of the things that was in the shared vision under 2020 was this idea of kind of the equal funding of both CPS and Preschool Promise students as kind of our measure there. And so one of the question marks that comes from that is, does that mean that we have to pay out for the same level of services? So one of the things that they raised was the desire to have the full year versus the school year, right? One of the other things we talked about is that there actually is nothing within the vision before that goes to how do we measure success for students, students within a program who matriculate, like whether or not they're matriculating to CPS whether or not are we having some definition of success that's in there outside of the star, like the 3-star, 4-star, 5-star markers there. And so I think that's another part of the things that we would have to think about now, because in the beginning we were really thinking about it from, or I see you all were thinking about it, some of you all were thinking about it from the perspective of building up program. Now that we're here, what are those measurements that we look at with regards to success results? How do we measure success results? How do we measure whether or not students are ready? Those type of things that and whether or not those students are coming to CPS. I think are all things that we can look at. I know from their perspective, they're also looking at some things with regards to the flexibility of how you measure or how they address building up programs to be quality programs, as well as there ultimately has to be some discussion around what is the true level percentage that we kind of look at as the guiding point of what we have, because right now we are both in our combined amounts over the allocated $15 million that we set aside, or that was set aside under the levy. And so the reality is that our vision probably should recognize that in some way or fashion and discuss what we will do to address that going forward, because that is not sustainable. So, I mean, there was a couple of those things specifically around how the dollars are split, how should the dollars be spent, and should the same procedures with regards to whether or not it's school year versus summer, or full year versus school year, be applied to both CPS and CPP. And then ultimately, how do we do measurements of success for the students who go through the program? Because I think ultimately we haven't really had that shared conversation in any of the mission and vision statements we've had so far. So those are just a few of them that we looked at. I think there's more to be said about what does a vision look like for a program that's already built than a program that's building. And so we can certainly have this discussion and kind of bring forth any ideas to the table.
Thank you. Now we'll do questions from board members in a second. I just want to see if Superintendent Wright or Treasurer Wagner or General Counsel, who were also at that meeting, is there anything else you'd add or characterize differently?
I think what you covered was comprehensive for what the discussion was. I think it's really important that we reiterate the conversation around having drafts that the board can actually look at and work on as our individual board first, before there's the opportunity to do some of that shared work with the CPP board as well. So making sure that there is identification and alignment within the board as it's connected to the initial asks from the levy, so that there is alignment with us prior to having the additional conversations with the other team.
Mm-hmm. And just one other thing, I don't know if the 2020 shared vision was shared with all of the board. And so if it hadn't been, that we'll make sure that we get that shared out with all of the board.
It was shared with the board. It was with the General Counsel Hoying can share it again, but it was shared as one of the documents that was inclusive of the history of kind of where we were first and where we ended up. So it was one of those attachments.
Thank you, Superintendent. Treasurer Wagner, anything you want to add?
No, thank you. Obviously, my biggest concern is about how to split the 15 million.
Right.
So, I think we're good.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions from board members? Ms. Jones.
Thank you for that update. I think it sounds like things are starting off really well. My only concern has more to do with process again. And so this task group is charged with what, as opposed to the direct relationship between the two boards?
So the small group is charged with bringing, best case, a recommended new document to both boards.
MOU?
Yes,
Okay.
for their approval. I think that will likely happen in stages. And I think that the thought, and the superintendent's looking at me like I said something incorrect. So it's entirely possible.
No, it's not just the MOU though. The conversation was around both the shared vision as the first part, and the second part was also recommendations from there for updates as a part of the master agreement. So those were the two documents.
Okay, and that, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think some of that conversation, I mean, in the big picture of this collaborative, I think there's always opportunity for us to appear before the public and have these bigger conversations around shared vision and everything. And so I just think it's worth looking at least one meeting before we start putting things in writing.
I think that's right.
So we can do that.
Yeah, I think it's to both and.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Craig, and then Dr. Moffat.
Yeah, just quickly to share two real points on what you just mentioned. One of the things we did talk about in that meeting was the need to have us as somehow getting both boards together for conversations on a more regular basis as well. So that's something that was a kind of return to there. And then I think to the second point is that ultimately the agreement itself will be, all the line item parts of the agreement will be done by staff, right? So like what our goal is in that conversation is really, what are the principles, what are the vision things that we can take that in our discussions with the board and bring back those thoughts back and forth? How do we get to a point where we're working from the same understanding as they build that master agreement? Because I think that's part of the problem sitting right now, and that's one of the things we reiterate is that we can't make any promises from our board. What we can do is take back the information and for our discussion among us, and they doing the same, right? And then we come back together as a group to build that future vision, that shared vision.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Ms. Bolden?
We forgot about
Yeah.
Just kidding. Dr. Moffat, then Ms. Bolden.
So I was able to attend their annual meeting, the Cincinnati Preschool Promise annual meeting, and the question that you asked, Board Member Jones, is exactly what one of their members asked as well. Why are we having small groups when we really need to be? She wasn't asking it in a negative, but the question was that the boards need to get together and hash out things. It's great to have small groups for maybe movement of things, but there also needs to be some both board alignment. So that question is not, I normally question your questions, but that question is in direct alignment with what they mentioned at their annual meeting of when there was mentioned to have a small subgroup meeting. Someone expressed interest to have both full boards engage in this work as well.
Thank you, Dr. Moffat. Ms. Bolden?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with the small group and the fact that the administration is going to negotiate this thing and write something. I would like us to think, because we're the ones that have to do it, think in terms of the electoral issue. We are looking for a renewal. Is it what, 25? All right. That is not a guarantee. And we're also going to probably have to be asking for additional monies about other things besides preschool. Very, very soon. Been like 8 years. We have a record of saying 8 years since new money. Kind-hearted, well-intentioned people from both boards have to be very practical and very political about this. Because once you lose a levy or a renewal, you do it again and again. And I will tell you, the popularity of preschool right now is less popular than it was when we first introduced this, with great community participation and partnership, even in the renewal, largely because of the economic situations that have changed for people and the tax bills that people are receiving. So I think it makes sense to have small group, because I don't want to show division or differences between or among the two boards right now or in the next month or so or 2 months. But I'm just suggesting that as you guys proceed, please do not assume that renewal is going to pass. Do not assume it, especially since we've been talking for 3 months in finance, our actual need for both us and our private providers for more money. We're actually talking about, will we ask for more money? Will we ask for a longer renewal time? So please don't forget, and I know we won't, because we're the ones that have to do it, but the other board doesn't have to go to the public like we do. And we have to go to public about other things very, very soon. So keep that in mind as we figure out what the basic principles and tenets are. I think the shared vision piece, rewriting that makes sense. And I think that you'd also have to, if you wanted to do something different than what we promised, you'd have to be able to share that shared vision with the public for the renewal. And some can argue you don't change anything until it's that renewal time. I don't know. So I just keep that in mind. I'm very, very worried about going to the public under all of these circumstances that people are experiencing. Negativity everywhere. Even when people are doing a good job, people are mad at them. So just be aware, because you guys have to be the ones, we have to be the ones thinking about it, because the other folks aren't going to be thinking about that.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Any other comments or questions? Superintendent Wright.
I think the only other one for me, and it's more of a comment and just something to think about in terms of clarity. There have been several individuals that have also reached out because the makeup of the board does include individuals that are recommended and assigned by Cincinnati Public Schools. And so a part of that reason is, as I understand, is to also act as the voice and the interest of Cincinnati Public Schools. And I don't know, while our staff actually attends the meeting as well, our director of early childhood attends the joint sessions, I don't know that there's been much conversation, at least since I've been here, and maybe that's not the design, but I don't know that there's been much conversation with our representatives on the CPP board about what the priorities are for CPS. And so I just raised that because it has been brought up to me in a few different places, and I thought this was the best place for us to talk about that. Maybe not now, but it's something that at some point there, at least some clarity, some alignment, and some conversation with those that represent our interest on the other board as well.
Thank you, Superintendent. I think there's one board member up here who has a perspective on this, or at least a question that is well placed, which is Ms. Jones.
I do.
For those watching,
as the person who you all have appointed to the Preschool Promise Board, which I am extremely invested in, and I put my feelers out to kind of get some information, just so I know when I walk in there on January 1, what role am I playing here? Where's my niche? And there is definitely a difference of opinion about whose interests I, as a board member on CPP, would represent. Now, I don't know how that gets worked out, and I think the philosophical context of CPP, I mean, there's lots of arms to it and all of that, which I think we all need to revisit, because I think there's lots of new people, not only on our side, but on theirs. I will tell you that there used to be, and I am one of those people, I always talk about sometimes the things that we did in the past worked. And we got to go back to the past and do it. It's like we used to, our point person for Preschool Promise used to meet with the 4 or 5 designated people on that board on a regular basis. So I hear people say, well, you represent the district's interests. Okay, how do you do that when you're trying to grow a program? I'm thinking that now, but they used to have that contact with a person just so they could be abreast of what's going on with the district. I think the same would hold true for the other representatives on there. So there's lots of confusion right now that I hope we can get worked out before I go, because I don't want to work that hard, but I will.
Thanks, Superintendent.
On behalf of kids, So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Board Member Jones. I know that Mrs. Weinberg wants to get a word in. I also know that Treasurer Wagner, after Mrs. Weinberg, we'll go to Treasurer Wagner.
I just wanted to add, yes, there's lots of confusion, and I'm so excited that you all were able to meet with them and looking forward to the next meeting, because I do think at some point both boards do need to sit down. We need to have a conversation. We need to be very transparent and have good communication moving forward. So I look forward to the next steps.
Thank you very much. Treasurer Wagner?
Yeah, I was just going to add a little bit of history there. So Ms. Jones was correct. There was a small group that met when we first started meeting that included the superintendent, the treasurer, and the early childhood director, and the corresponding people on their side, so that we could communicate together across the organizations. And there were board members from both sides involved as well.
Thank you very much. Vice President Craig.
Just wanted to add to one last part, and it's more to Board Member Bolton's earlier statement. I think one of the things that we talked about, and I kind of want to make it as something that we are committed to, is that the story of Preschool Promise is what we define it as. And in a lot of ways, it's been very difficult these last however many years, because we don't have data that both programs are doing together that we can go out to the public and say, this is how successful we have been. We're both doing our individual stories separate from each other. And one of the more rewarding points of our discussion was the recognition that, you know what, that doesn't work when we come back to a voter and say, this place, we were really good over here. And you know, this place, we were really good. So how do y'all compare? Right? That's the first question somebody will ask. Whereas if you had markers that indicated and gave data across both CPS and CPP to say this stuff works. Like, I think to Board Member Bolton's point, when you're going to the voter and saying we want more money or we need, you know, the same money back, having things to say, this is work. These kids are now prepared to do X, Y, and Z. They're better at their starting position than any other child who doesn't get this benefit. Sounds so much better than, I think our kids look really good. Or look how cool this space looks, you know? And so if that effectiveness is something that I think, as we think about our shared vision, as we have those discussions with their board, and as we kind of get into some of the data, because I think there's a lot of statements that are really easy to say, oh, all these Preschool Promise kids come to CPS. Well, we got to see that, right? And so I think that's something that's part of that shared vision that we want to have that discussion on, that maybe is also something new that maybe we should be more committed to as we go forward to explain to the voters, is that education that's both an effort from both of our organizations, right, of CPS and CPP, to be delivering that same message, which is something we've not really been able to do.
Thank you, Vice President Jones. Craig, I think I called Ms. Jones the superintendent a second ago. I think I called Brandon Carolyn. It's like I hit 8 p.m. Okay, so anything else on CPP before we go to our second board matters item? Dr. Moffitt.
Are we re-engaging the committee that you're talking about? Like, what is we had a robust discussion that I liked. What's the point? Like, what are we doing? Is that the proposal, to actually have a meeting with our people that are representing CPS on the CPP? You guys are looking at me. I'm like, I heard.
Is it a quick question for whom?
Well, I'm saying, did we decide on doing that? Treasurer Wagner said it used to exist. Are we suggesting that that's a best practice we want to reinvigorate?
I had thought that sounded like a good idea to everybody, and thought that would carry on going forward. Am I mistaken on that
So
front?
what's the next step? Is that an assignment? What do we do? I guess that's my point.
I don't know that there is anything that we need to do necessarily, because I think my hunch is, Superintendent, that was something you all wanted to do and just weren't aware of before.
Yeah, I think I actually brought it up because I think that there's misalignment, and I think it's important that we all get in alignment in terms of the roles, especially for those that we have appointed to the CCP board, that are really our voices on the board. And from what's been shared with me and from observations, having some alignment around that. My recommendation would be, before we move forward in that space, we have to get aligned on what we're looking at in terms of mission vision as a CPS board, and then the connection to the CPP board. And then we can look at going back to having the conversations around working with those individuals that are on the other board, because I don't think right now it would be prudent for us to do that, because there's misalignment right now for where we are currently. And so I think having some time to work through that, to get to alignment, and then making sure that we will get there quickly, I do believe, and then making sure that we're able to have those conversations to do some redirections, because I do think some of that's going to be necessary based on what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. And doing that before Board Member Jones routes off as one of our representatives from this board, as she routes off into a representative for our board on the Cincinnati Preschool Promise Board as well. So I did not, I'm glad for the clarification, because I did not take that as an immediate next step. But I do think if we're doing that, and as we're moving forward in terms of that, we would need to identify if there is a board member representative that's going to be a part of that conversation, who that person is going to be, as well as we would work with the rest of it through administration, but we wouldn't do it until after we get alignment around the vision or the shared mission, and the next steps for the master agreement.
So if I hear it right, it's like go ahead, Member Jones.
If I'm understanding the superintendent, I think I agree with what she said. I do feel like that it's very important, however, that we do bring the two boards together,
Right.
if nothing else, but to sit at the same table, to dialogue to the public about what the entities are doing. And if nothing else, but to report how we're aligning and and how are we preparing for the levy and all that. Just some general, it could be a meeting of 2 to 3 topics. But I think, the visibility of us partnering together is very important as well. So as we approach levy season or whatever, I do think we have a lot of work to do. And I know this subgroup is going to work on some things, but a lot of those big picture items, those would have been at the table of the board to board contact. So I will suggest that we at least do one within the next several months.
So President Lindy, can I finish my clarification?
Yeah, Dr. Bobbitt, go ahead.
So I was asking for clarification because I agree that there's a lot to do, but I think we could at least engage those that are on an appointment from CPP. I agree with you, but tell them about the CPS budget, like bring them abreast of where our status is. I mean, I think that there's work we can do before the shared vision piece, because they need to understand where we are as a district. And so I think that it's a and, but I do think we need to bring them together, at least acknowledge, and I don't know who that would be. So that's what I'm asking. Who is it that does that?
I think Dr. Bobbitt, I think points well taken, and same with Ms. Jones and Superintendent. I think one of the challenges we're having is that there are a series of things that are happening in parallel, and they're all important. And I think we need to move all of them forward. One of them is a joint meeting, agree. And another is the ability for both boards to get behind, with real conviction, a shared vision for this next chapter. And it may be exactly the same as the shared vision we approved last in 2020, or it may have a small number of really important changes in it. And that's going to take continued conversations with this body. It's going to take continued meetings of this small group that we delegated those meetings to in our last meeting together. And I think getting better alignment between what CPS's priorities are and our representatives on that board sounds like a fabulous idea. And I think we're going to try to move all of these forward. The thing that's tricky and hard is they all need to work together. And they all need to be moving forward, because I think if we just do one, I don't think it's going to get us what we need. And people have used the phrase levy season. I would just say out loud, there is no CPS levy on the ballot. So there is an election coming up. It's an important election. Some of us are on the ballot in that election, but there is no CPS levy at this election. And there are important conversations about the future. But we're going to try to, I think, to move all of these ideas forward in concert. Any other comments here before we keep going? Okay, moving on to number 2, Mrs. Weinberg.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to bring up how the board and superintendent will communicate and work together. It states here from August the 15th, 2022, that it would be reviewed and updated annually. I wanted to just bring it up as a group discussion among the board. And I had a question about number 3 in terms of if there's any reason to possibly change the wording. It says any requests made by board members for information should be sent to the superintendent and copied to board members and board staff. I know that there are some board members who do not want to have the emails, so I'm not quite sure how we want to address that. So just wanted to have a group conversation and address this.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. If people would like a copy of the version of this that we approved over a year ago, I just have a hard copy for everyone. I think, so Ms. Weinberg, you're asking about item 3 that's on here?
Yes, I'm asking about item 3 and then just wanting to have a discussion for the others. I'm actually fine with the other things. 3 would just be the only thing because I know, as I stated before, some board members have asked not to receive.
If a board
those
member
emails.
would like to opt out, is there any reason why that board member would not be able to opt out?
Right. So whatever you
Yeah,
all would
I think
like
it's
to
a great
discuss regarding.
question. I read through these also, Mrs. Weinberg, in preparing for today, and I was struck by how many of these things are reflected in the bylaw revision that we've been doing. And it's nice to see. I was first a little worried, like, oh gosh, I hope we haven't gone. But there's actually some very nice alignment on all of these. I certainly would invite superintendent to share or others, but I can't see a problem with a board member deciding they'd like to opt out of receiving certain pieces of information. And any concerns from others?
Is this for me? So I think for clarity, the request as I asked for clarification from the board member was not to be copied on responses that came from other board members that said copy to all board. If there is something that's coming from me and a part of our way of work as a part of that's now included in our bylaws, as I understand, or the upcoming bylaws to be voted on, is when a board member is making a request based on the information here, that board member makes the request to me and blind copies or the rest of the board or has their assistants to send it to the board. So, and if there is a response to that, the same thing is also happening. So in terms of clarification, what the board member has requested is not to be included in that loop. And if there's anything coming from me directly to the board, to still be included in that. And so it really removes some of the other questions that may come up or the emails that come up as a part of that in terms of, questions from other board members or, being asked questions or responses to other things.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any other, did that answer your question, Mrs. Weinberg?
It does answer my question, but I'm just also curious to see if any of my other colleagues have anything else to add.
Any other comments?
Not everyone speak at once.
Ms. Bolton?
I remain confused about what we can and what we can't email. That's, we had the rule about never say at all or what have you. I do think it's important for board cohesiveness that requests for information, and I think we deal with this in the bylaws, requests for information that we make to the superintendent or to the treasurer or to general counsel sometimes. Some of that has to be covered attorney-client, but I think it's for cohesion on the board, I think it's important for all board members to see what each board member is asking. And that whatever the response is, this is how we've practiced this again and again and again, then the superintendent responds and we all have the same level of information. Because the thing that divides boards invariably is levels of information. And it's not just, well, somebody knows a little bit more about health and safety or finance or what it is. I'm not talking about that level of information because we all have our particular responsibilities on the board. But this a request for information, I think it should be in writing. And I think the superintendent should respond to all when one is asked. I really do. That has worked in the past and doesn't work anymore, and we've adjusted somewhat the bylaws. I don't see that that's as long as we're not talking about it, sharing, I mean, what's the guideline of the process?
Ms. Jones?
Yeah, I think that it sort of, I agree basically with what's been said. However, I do think, and maybe the bylaws, once we approve that, because we did provide some clarity around what is request for information and what is an assignment. Because I think that that was what folks, and I am one of those folks, I had trouble distinguishing between what appeared to be request for information or what was an assignment. And so I think we should allow, when we approve the bylaws, I think we have to revisit too, again, like we said we were going to do. But I think this may work itself out. However, I think where my concern is the numbers of requests, the frequency of requests. It can be a lot. And so for some people, maybe they just don't want to spend all day on email, reading stuff, So I think that would be my only concern. Not everything warrants a request for information. That's what I believe. Not everything warrants a request for information. And I think we have to think about, like you said, there's a difference in how we perceive that, and we have to respect that people are in different places with that. But I look at some emails and I'm like, I don't want to read it. I just let it go, But I do want to be copied on things that we are doing as a board to be consistent with that. But I do understand the bulk of them sometimes is not good, so.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Dr. Moffitt, followed by Vice President Craig.
So as a person who also, I think that we need to revisit the communication plan in totality, not tonight. I have sent, well, let me just make my statement. My statement is that I feel like there's a lack of consistency. I have put in a request for information because I wanted information. And it wasn't necessarily something that everyone may want information about. When I sent that directly to the superintendent, and then there's a stream of emails, and then the response gets sent to the entire board. It can be taken out of context. So I think that we need to have some sort of process. I was really just requesting the information, didn't need to go to everyone else, to be respectful of everyone's inboxes, as they say, because it was really just my question. And if there's a summation that needs to happen, or if it needs to go to exec session, or if it needs to be brought to everyone, I think that then that can happen. But again, I believe that needs to kind of be a revamp of this particular communication plan, because I do think there are some things that some board members have questions about, that it's really not warranting everyone's concern. And maybe that can be addressed here. And I do think it will be addressed additionally in the bylaws. But I've also seen where other board members have asked questions and it didn't get sent to everyone. So again, to me, that's about consistency. So being consistent across the board in our responses. But I do think that some of this will be addressed in the bylaws to an extent. I still go back to everyone doesn't have to have a response to everyone's question. So that's where you get the bulk. And if a board member says that they don't want that information, then that's fine. But we need to maybe have some sort of plan around when there is an individual question that doesn't warrant everyone knowing that information. Let's put it in the communication plan, since we happen to have a separate one on how that gets addressed. And that, unfortunately, a number 3 just kind of says any and all requests by board members. But maybe we could differentiate that out a little bit, because there may be a question about a bus that doesn't need to get sent to everyone. There may be a question about something specifically that doesn't get sent to everyone. And if responses are sent, then we need to also have a process on how to put that in context, so that if there is a long strand of emails or a thread, and you just see the last, it's not that you just see the last, you see the entire context. And so I think we should take the time. We've also got the evaluation coming up, so we should take the time to kind of maybe revamp that. And I do believe that it will be addressed in the bylaws as well.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Mr. Craig, and I have a couple of thoughts.
So I just wanted to maybe circle back to where Mrs. Weinberg had started with, and I guess maybe the question being, do we need to add something that would say, for instance, again, a board member who may say, I have a different amount of information I want to receive from the superintendent in response to stuff that they create, that kind of an opt-out or those type of things as a process, because I think that's somewhat what we have had folks been doing, or had at least one board member doing. And I heard board member Bolton saying that idea, kind of having a consistency to, maybe that's the question, is whether or not that opt-out idea is something that should be something that's part of that communication plan, as to whether or not that's something we want as a principle for board members to be able to do, or whether or not we want kind of the shared information and folks can read it on their own. If they choose not to, they choose not to. Because I do think that's something for us to decide, and again, not something that we'll decide today, but I think that's something for us to be consistent about, and in alignment with where our board bylaws are going too, because I do think there's some aspects of some of this that has been modified based on how we've redefined stuff on our board policies, that probably do board bylaws that probably does need to get updated and corrected.
Thank you, Vice President Craig. I think I won't add anything new. I just want to summarize where I think we are and see if this addresses your concern, or you're not concerned, but just like reason for putting on the agenda.
Absolutely.
And so I think what I'm hearing from everybody is this is an important topic. There's a bunch of this that is in the process of being addressed through the bylaw review. We should finish that. And after that's done, this is also an annual practice that we committed to in our contract with the superintendent, and it is healthy and appropriate for us to revisit the communication norms also. And there may be some important issues to figure out as we go into this next year together, and then we do all those things. So step one is let's get the bylaws over the finish line. Step two, let's get some time to review this, and then make any changes we want to for this next year. Is that, I'm not trying to add anything new. I'm just trying to paraphrase what I've heard from people.
I think so.
Okay, great.
So for clarity, so in the meantime.
In the meantime.
Because we have a period of time in the meantime. So based on that request, I've honored what has been asked. So if there is a response, because I was asked, and it was very specific, the kinds of responses. It was not information that was coming to me, not information that was being directed from me to the whole board. So I've honored that. And I just want to make sure that that's fine moving forward until we get to these next phases.
I think nothing has changed. We have not approved or adopted anything different from what we have in place. We have a timeline and a schedule on which we're going to do those pieces, so that if it does change, that would be a formal piece. Is that
okay?
Clarity is good?
Yes.
Okay. Any inquiries or updates this evening? Ms. Bolton.
Want to inquire about our work session on Saturday. And I'm in hopes that Saturday will be spent on our challenging budget issues ahead and money issues ahead. I know that last October we were going to do that, and we didn't spend very much time, if any, on that day working on the budget, and it put us behind from the get-go. And so I'm in hopes that since we've done so much, let's say this evening, my hope is that that Saturday is spent on these giant issues confronting us. And it's not about setting a target or how to cut here, cut there. This is how we're going to approach all of the issues in front of us moving forward. So I was inquiring about what our Saturday looks like, because I haven't heard, and I'm finance chair.
Thank you, Member Bolden. I think I shared an update with the board a couple of weeks ago about the times and the topics. And so
I'm sorry.
that's okay. There was an email that went out a couple weeks ago about the going, I think, was it 9:30 to 12:30? And we have the major topic is budget. And this, I think the other thing we wanted to do was we still haven't formalized a set of priorities for the board, and we can decide that we don't want to do that, but we're looking for some space for that. But the only large topic on the agenda is what you're describing. This email should have gone out to everybody some weeks ago. I want to make sure people got it.
Not to worry. My issue, though, is that this is, I don't know if board priorities, what is meant by that. That's us just coming up with our 4 or 5 things like we normally do.
Yeah,
Could we please do that in a meeting instead of use any part of a Saturday to do that?
So I think, Ms. Bolden, we can certainly try to, I think the first order of business and the most important order of business for the Saturday session is the budget piece you're describing. I think if and only if we can get that done, would we do an additional piece.
Okay, because we're not going to get it done in 3 hours. I'm just going to tell you that.
What can you say more about why that is?
Because this is not about finding a budget target and how to cut to it. It's not about across the board this or across the board that. It's about how does ad hoc impact it? How does school consolidation impact it? What are we looking at regarding master contract negotiations with all of our unions? These are huge things to talk about. This is not about finding, and I said this, I think, in finance to the treasurer and whoever was there. I said, this is not about, I wouldn't even try to have a target right now. This is not about meeting a balanced budget or making sure we have cash for the next year. This is bigger than that. And it's not just the amount of money that we no longer have as revenue. That's one thing. There are other ways to approach what we need to be doing financially than talking in terms of just a budget. It really is about budget, finance, and growth.
Let me invite the superintendent to share any context you'd like to share on the budget-focused meeting that's coming up on Saturday.
Definitely, and this is conversation that we've had with the treasurer. So to Board Member Bolton's point, I think that there were a lot of lessons learned from last year. And one of the lessons learned that was apparently in some previous years, there was some initial conversation that had happened with the board in the fall before the entire budgeting process started. What we are looking to bring as a part of the presentation on Saturday is some conversation around just that. I understand what Board Member Bolton is sharing in terms of a target, but at the end of the day, we also know that regardless of what else may need to happen or doesn't need to happen, we know that $85 million we will not have because of ESSER. And so we would be at a disadvantage to not begin to have some conversation around priorities from the board in terms of thinking about all of those topics and conversations. And so it gives an opportunity for us to look collectively at the big picture. It gives an opportunity for us to begin discussions around priorities with the board so that as we begin to go back, because we are tasked with, we also from last year, one of the timeline that's been provided by the treasurer is that to the finance committee as well, is that we were targeting December in terms of getting information out to schools. That was a part of the timeline. So we can't wait until after October to begin those conversations if we're really going to have the deep level of work that we need to have around what has to change in our district. So this is an opportunity for conversation. It's an opportunity for dialogue. It's an opportunity to see what are some of the things that we are thinking about and big areas that may need to be discussed, because we do have this looming, there's a looming piece over us. We don't know about forecasts right now for 5 years, for the 5 year in terms of November. We know it gets updated at that point. This is not the conversation, but there is an $85 million conversation out there, and giving some opportunity for board to really give us some feedback so that as we go back and start working on a plan, we're bringing something to you that aligns with the overall vision, mission, and our goals and guardrails.
So I know Ms. Bolden wants to respond, and then we'll go to Ms. Jones.
I think the superintendent just made the case for a day-long effort regarding budget. I really do. I mean, I'm glad that you're going to bring us something And whether it's a recommendation, a proposal, or options, or whatever we want to call it, or it's been arrived at based upon y'all looking at this amount of money that we no longer have, which, by the way, we've known for 3 years we're not going to have it. So that's the way that is. But I just think that, I think this requires probably a presentation by you all, discussion by us, combined conversations, and I think that's the day. I can't imagine anything else being terribly important compared to that. Now, if you want to work those board priorities somehow into it, those are our board priorities, what, for 90 days or something?
Let me go to Ms. Jones and then we'll come back.
I'm not sure if I even want to respond. I'll just say this. If what Ms. Bolton is describing and what the superintendent is describing, I think it probably would take a full day. I don't have a full day. I won't be there for a full day. But I think what inevitably happens when we start talking about the budget is that we get off on tangents. Right. We don't focus on the big pieces. We start focusing on looking at this and that and this. If we're talking big picture about growth and all of that, I'm good with that. And you mentioned ad hoc. You can't do that until you have an ad hoc recommendation. Right. You see what I'm saying? So if we're talking about these big buckets, as I'm hearing the superintendent and you describe, we should be able to do that in 3 hours or 4 hours, however. But I'm not willing to spend a full day. That's just it. Because, but people have to think about that. We get that stuff in our hands and we start dissecting it. We just go through it with a fine-tooth comb, which I don't think we need to do. I think we have to build in some trust that the superintendent and the treasurer are going to give us the information that we need and we can respond to it or react, but we can't start dissecting it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. I know the superintendent wants to share a piece. Dr. Moffitt, do you want to go?
Yeah, I do. I don't have a whole day only because messed all up. Turn it off, Mom. Anyway, I don't have a full day because we cut the time down. We had a day scheduled and we cut it down. I disagree with Board Member Jones, and we typically do this. So this is normal out of love, but that is our responsibility. Whether or not we like it, it is our responsibility, that budget. I don't like the fact that we really need to take a whole day to do it, but I also know that cutting $80 million from a budget for next year is a big task that I'm not willing to tell publicly I don't have time for that. So I personally think that what we should do is, with due diligence, ask the right questions. You can get there in 2 questions and I get there in 10. That's you versus me. But I believe that we don't need a full ad hoc presentation. There were tenets of the ad hoc presentation that we were provided with that we could absolutely have to give the board some semblance of overcrowding, over facilities. We've had a facilities session where fact-finding session, so we understand what facilities are looking like and where we need to designate money. We've had an ESSER presentation. There are things that I think we could absolutely discuss that ad hoc might tie into that we have without a full presentation, but I'm not willing to just shortchange it because I thought that the October session was to listen to the treasurer, was to listen to the administration, and as a board, work collaboratively on what needs to happen with regard to the budget for the district. It just happens to be $80 million this year, which is significant. So are you listening to respond?
I haven't said anything yet, and so no, I hear Dr. Moffitt.
But I would like to respond. Ms. Bolton was allowed to respond.
That's fair, and some of us have not gone yet. We'll go next. Go ahead.
Okay, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Dr. Moffitt, but I think we all operate differently around this, and I have said my piece around big buckets, big ideas, big concepts, but then we have people who like the nitty-gritty details. We have a few of those. of course, we can't take the whole day and get down to these nitty-gritty details. I'm very much aware that we're responsible for the budget. But that's why I also say, you know, we can ask questions of the big picture that's presented to us. You know, but when we start dissecting it line by line, why this, why that, we're never going to have time for all of that. And we're never going to get to the final product. That's all I'm saying. So I get it.
So,
you know.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. I know the superintendent wants to share something. I just, having not spoken yet, I think we have to get started somewhere. We're having a discussion at 8:30 about a meeting that hasn't even happened yet. And I think we got to get in there. I think we got to try our best. We got to work hard. And if we discover that we need more time, we will create more time together. I'll also note that I sent the email out about this schedule and the timing of this weeks ago. And so it's not I'm excited for us to get started. We're going to get started on Saturday. Superintendent.
And just for clarity, I think that we have set the stage or the vision for the final budget presentation that we did before, that took us through the story, that gave us the individual budgets and talked about where we were looking to do change within that. This is not what this conversation is about. So it's not we're not at a place yet. We've not had the conversations collectively, and we want to start that conversation with the board. So we've begun to have some conversation with staff because everybody needs to get prepared for it, regardless to whether or not they feel they need to get prepared for it or not. Everybody does need to get prepared. But the next step to that becomes the conversations at the board level, because learning from the lessons last year, we're not interested in walking down the same path that we did last year. And when we thought we were at a point to be in a decisive place, we were not, and it backed us up as a district. So if you will give us an opportunity to do the presentation, to share with you what we have, and from there discuss next steps, I think that you will be pleased with where we start on Saturday.
Thank you, Superintendent. Others on this topic or other inquiries and updates? Ms. Bolton.
Just on other topics.
Is it an inquiry or update?
It's
Great.
an inquiry regarding two things, if I could. I know we've purchased some vans and are using some vans, and wanted to know if who's monitoring our health checks or how that is. Are we back on schedule or getting close to being back on schedule with our health checks for our students?
So that we are, and I think we shared that recently. We are back on schedule. Our health checks are being scheduled through Ms. Popejoy's office. Wendy Popejoy is the one that's doing the schedules and working with our health clinics to get our students there. And we are primarily doing the transport, not with buses, but with vans.
Great. And if I can, just an update as to when and maybe I missed this as well, the report from Elevar.
Yes, so there was so we will have, that's one of the things that General Counsel and I discussed today. There was an additional meeting today at the location with Elevar, with General Counsel, and with our operations team. So we are prepared to have an update at the next exec session around sale of property.
That's great. But we're not selling the property.
No, I mean, as an
Property,
executive
yeah.
session topic.
Just wanted to clear that
Right,
up.
no, as an executive session topic.
4:15 calls.
Right.
But the other part of that too then is the where we are regarding the zoning effort.
And so we will be able to
That
do the
too.
updates at that time, because there have been several different conversations with our general counsel and working in partnership with our operations team.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Any other inquiries or updates? Mr. Craig.
So I just wanted to share an update on an assignment I was given, that I will be sending out an email with kind of an outline of some ideas with regard to a new board member orientation process. And I want to thank, in a little early kudos, but I want to thank the General Counsel's office, the Treasurer's office, the Superintendent's office for being able to facilitate me being able to kind of together some ideas and an outline. And so I hope that as it goes out to the whole board here in the next few days, that folks will provide thoughts, and then maybe we can either, I don't know if we have to vote on it or anything, but I think it's presented out to the public either at the CAL meeting or at our next board meeting.
Thank you very much, Vice President Craig. That's excellent. Any other inquiries or updates this evening? Any assignments? Any kudos? Ms. Jones.
Yes, have a kudo. I'm happy to be at Aiken in College Hill, center of the universe, where I live right around the corner, so I can almost walk home, but I won't in the dark. But anyway, there were two young ladies who were sitting right over there, side by side, and I was going to give them, those are my babies. I coached them in fast pitch softball from the age of 8 until they got to high school. And they are now both assistant principals here at Aiken. And I wanted to offer them kudos, but one of them texted me and said, I got a toddler at home that I have to get. But they have young families, and so I understand. But Alita Hardy and Ashley Hill, and I just wanted to give them a kudos.
Yeah, baby. Swoop.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Other kudos this evening. Mr. Craig.
So I want to give two kudos up. First, so last year the high school ethics bowl was tremendous, and we had 2 schools who actually ended up participating. Although this year they've done a big outreach. 2 schools from CPS that participated, and the winner of the regional was Walnut. And so this year I'm like really ecstatic to announce that we've more than doubled the number of schools who are participating from the district this year in the high school ethics bowl, and bringing multiple teams to it. And so I think they're projecting right now, they had a total, I think it was under 20 teams last year, and they're projecting more than twice as many teams in total competing in this competition. It's going to be a really great opportunity. And for those who have not seen these wonderful students and do their presentations, I get to sit and judge a couple rounds, not of any CPS students, of course, because that would be unethical. But these students are talking about issues that are like high-level issues that are current event topics, and providing deep thought and wonderful presentations. And again, up until last year, there was only one school in the entire region who had an ethics bowl team, and that was St. Ursula. And so for us to come in our first year and dominate, and this year we're going to fill more seats, continue to dominate, I think it's tremendous. The second kudos, I have to give kudos to the Athletics Hall of Fame event that several of us attended. I got to tell you, there's so much pride, and by the way, there were so many folks who we were just missing. Ms. Bolden's tribal cheer there for her, but there was so many people who have come back into the district, visit, to share, to appreciate all these things. But it was really cool to see people's families who, like, all we knew of this person was, this is grandpa, this is grandma, right? This is auntie, this is mom. And especially for some folks who couldn't be here anymore, to have their families be able to go up on stage and talk about how, like, their family member would be so proud, or how they'd be like, why are you making this big fuss about me? It just reminds you of how many great things our district does. And then the third thing is I went to Walnut's homecoming football game, and it was a wonderful game to go to. And it's just a reminder also that our kids are doing some amazing things. The band has like a whole Mario show that is tremendous. They got electric guitars in marching band now. I didn't know that was allowed. But it just really is just a reminder when you get out there and you see people doing these amazing things, how much work they put into that. So I want to give them a kudos for a great show.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Any other kudos? Mrs. Weinberg.
And usually I am the only one with kudos, so I just am so surprised by all of my colleagues. Great job. I'm going to be quick with my kudos. Last Friday, I got the chance, along with board member Moffitt, and I think board member Morosky snuck in, and then also, of course, our wonderful friend out there. Got the chance to go to Fairview. It was German American Day, and it was amazing to just hear the children sing in German, and they were just so excited and so happy to perform. I also got a chance to see my little one perform as well, and she didn't really want to say hello to me while I was there. She said, "Mom, you're saying hi to me. Please stop." But overall, it was a great opportunity to see the amazing things that the CPS students are doing. And I just appreciate the times that I get to go in and watch the kids do their thing.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Any other last kudos before we break for the evening? Having no other business before us, I declare our meeting adjourned.